Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. This is John Suntress. You know, it occurred to me that it's Halloween season, and sometimes I get to do things that are related to the holidays, sometimes I don't, but I came up with an idea, and that's Weird Balloon. So be looking for some very interesting episodes that I've already posted and ones that are coming up that have a Halloween feel to them. You can already listen to Bert Kearns talking about entertainers who died on stage, some really bizarre death on stage tales that he has in a book called The Show Won't Go On. Really fun conversation about that. Also looking forward to next week talking to an author about Bela Lugosi and the Monogram 9, movies he made after Dracula, some horror, some suspense, interesting choices that are really considered some really great film performances from Lugosi. It wasn't just Dracula. So check those out. Thanks a lot for listening through the commercials. I've got one more, and then we're going to start the show. But thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. It's time for another Weird Balloon, because it is the holiday, or Halloween season. I suppose it is the holiday season. It's so funny. I love when Bill Maher is like, adults dress up for Halloween. It's like, hey man, it's fun. I'm sorry that you're against adults having fun. I've got Franco with me from the thsi podcast, and of course, his wonderful partnership with Art Baltazar. Art and Franco giving us wonderful things like Superman of Smallville, and the Superman Family Adventures, and Tiny Titans, and Superpowers. So many great kids' books of the DC line, of course, their own creations as well, like The Owl and the Ghost, a collaboration that Franco had with Sarah Richard, which is up for a Ringo Award this weekend at Baltimore Comic-Con. Franco is at Baltimore Comic-Con as we release this. Make sure you say hi to him and let him know that you heard this great podcast. And of course, the two of them, along with my buddy Scoot, we all four do the thsi podcast as well with Art and Franco. But every now and then, Franco and I get together and we do a one-on-one conversation. And I wanted to talk about a couple things, one of which being the Joker movie is still on my mind. Can't deny it. It's an interesting film, and the fact that it's still in my brain, maybe I should give it more credit than it's due. I still have my problems with the movie. Franco has his problems as well. We get into that. We start off, though, talking about another favorite subject of ours, and that's Star Trek. The short treks have begun. I talked a little bit last week with Rob Burnett about the first one, Q&A. He hadn't seen the Tribble episode called The Trouble with Edward. It's been a couple weeks now, and then Edward's been out for about a week, and I really felt like I needed to talk about this because you guys know my problems with Star Trek Discovery. I am never a shrinking violet when it comes to that subject. And I feel like these short treks, again, are just going in the wrong direction. And it's kind of frustrating because the producers always talk about how they're telling their stories and they're doing them in continuity, and then they tell these stories that fly in the face of 50 years of Star Trek. Now, again, if you're a fan of Star Trek Discovery and what they're doing with the new shows, awesome. That's great, man. That's fantastic. But you'll forgive me, but I'm a massive Star Trek fan. I read the novels. I've watched all the television shows countless times. It's my wallpaper. Sometimes when I'm editing this very podcast, and I just want something that I can hear in the background that's familiar and entertaining, I can go back to the original Star Trek shows. The Discovery seasons I've only really watched once through. I've rewatched the Talos 4 episode of Season 2 again, and I did appreciate the characterization of Pike in number 1 as portrayed by Anson Mount and Rebecca Romaine. The first two short treks, though, they're kind of bugging me. And again, I kind of disagree with their elevation of characters they want to focus on and the way they're treating Spock. It seems like they continue to diminish Spock to support their new ideas. I don't agree with it. I don't think Spock is written the way they think he's written. Their obsession with Spock smiling is driving me crazy. We get into it. Franco and I talk about that. And then, of course, we talk about Joker. And we talk about what Franco's been doing lately as far as comic book-wise. But like I said, Joker in particular is still on my mind. And these short treks are grating on me. I am psyched for Star Trek Picard. But Michael Chabon wrote that Tribble short trek. I didn't find it funny. I'm amazed at the lack of negative reviews on the short trek of the Tribbles. People are like, oh, it was fun. I'm like, I didn't think it was fun. I didn't think it was funny. And it bums me out because H. John Benjamin and Archer is a fantastic show, and I like John Benjamin's comedy. I've liked him ever since his days on the Dr. Katz animated show when he played Ben, Dr. Katz's son. And, his character on Family Guy. I even like the Arby's commercials. But I just think this was a really, really dumb and unnecessary look at the Tribbles. Again, they felt the need to tell us how the Tribbles became the procreating monsters that they are. And again, I'm just like, I disagree. And again, it doesn't make sense with continuity. Just call Discovery a reboot. And half of my frustration with Discovery would go away. But they're so demanding that, no, we're in continuity. No, you're not. Because the stuff you do flies in the face of continuity. You'll hear me talk about it with Franco, but also get into a lot about Joker. And I posed the question, and it's in the title of today's Word Balloon, is Joker a superhero horror movie? You might disagree. That's fine. But the more I think about this movie, and especially some of the key scenes, I kind of think it is. And I kind of think, again, that it's a game-changing movie in the same way that Deadpool was and Logan in terms of beyond the traditional, what you can do with a superhero movie, or in this case, a supervillain movie. This goes in a lot of interesting directions, and I remain fascinated by it. So that's what I'm talking about today with Franco, Short Treks, and Joker on today's Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. That's you guys and women. Thank you very much, League, for your great support via Patreon. You are the sponsors of Word Balloon. You are keeping the lights on here at the Suntress Bat Cave and the Word Balloon Cave, and I thank you very much for that. I appreciate the support. Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free. But if you like what I'm doing, and if you can afford it, do you think Word Balloon is worth the price of a comic book to you? Is it worth the $1 a month to you even? If you think so, and you want to help the cause out, go to patreon.com/wordballoon, and you can subscribe or just click on the Patreon ad on the front page of wordballoon.com. That'll get you to my Patreon page. As I continue to expand the show, it's done with your help. Thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Man, it's been a pleasure having Aftershock as a sponsor this year. It's been a full calendar year of sponsorship. I thank them greatly for their support, and I am happy to talk about Aftershock books, whether it's my buddy Tim Seeley's Dark Red or Ollie Masters' Killer Groove that finished its 5-part story and the trade will be coming soon, whether it's You Are Obsolete from Matthew Klickstein or Animosity from Marguerite Bennett, Jimmy's Bastards and A Walk Through Hell, and many more from Garth Ennis. Cullen Bunn has so many great books, including Knights Temporal and Dark Ark and The Brothers Dracul. Man, just amazing stuff. American Monster, if you want to reach back from Brian Azzarello and Juan Doe. Really neat stuff, man. I love the Aftershock books. They are genre-bending, they deserve your attention, and they are being stewarded by Mike Martz and Joe Pruitt, who have excellent taste in creators, and they're letting these creators tell some really compelling stories. Descendant from Stephanie Phillips, another great example, and stuff from Chris Sabella, and so many other great creators. Don't take my word for it. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books and how to order them through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right. Pure nerd conversation with my good buddy Franco. I really respect him, and I respect his opinions. And we talk a lot about the current short treks that are already out there from CBS All Access. We talk about the anticipation of Star Trek Picard, and more conversation about Joker. I can't help it. I'm still thinking about it. I think we're all still talking about it as it continues to succeed every weekend and makes more money. Will we see a sequel? Franco brings up some interesting points that I hadn't considered with my complaints about the story, and he's given me new ideas to think about that I didn't consider in these last 2 weeks thinking about the movie. What do you think? And honestly, send me your opinions. John@wordballoon.com. Be happy to read some of the opinions that you, the audience, have on Joker as well. And I've seen the responses to some of my tweets and just independent tweets that people I follow have made. Lots of different opinions regarding the Joker movie, and would like to hear yours as well. And that's why I think it's still worth seeing, even with my problems with the film. So let's get into this conversation with Franco. on Word Balloon. Well, this is a fun word balloon. A couple weeks ago, I had Art Baltazar on, one of my co-creators of the Oh Yeah podcast, and now it's Franco. Welcome back, Franco, to Word Balloon.
Oh, thanks. This is an honor to be on this podcast.
You're my go-to guy, man. When a couple of years ago, I had to put out podcasts while I had no voice, and I needed you to be like my announcer, which was great.
Yeah. It's always a special treat to be on the real podcast, not slumming it over there on Arts.
Well, that's our screw around podcast, Oh Yeah podcast, that we just kind of, and then we're gonna mess around, I think, on this one as well.
If I screw around too much, you yell at me. So
no.
That's how I know I'm on the real podcast.
Yeah, well, I want to get honest. I want to get honest opinions, and this is going to be a very opinionated show because, and we'll get to it. But I will say right off the bat, as much as I have mixed feelings about the Joker movie, I'm still thinking about it. And people are, okay, good, and we'll get to that. And people are still talking about it. I know too, though, that you're a Star Trek fan. You're a longtime Star Trek fan, and we've had many conversations back and forth. And in anticipation of the third season of Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard coming up, they started pumping out the short treks again that come out monthly, and they're. They say they're 14 minutes, but I'm always like, okay, but like a good minute plus is the credits. So I'm like, they're really like 12 minutes and change.
Well, they're cheating us, is what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that, like, as far as actual story goes, because like, it's 15 minutes. It's like, no, it's not. And again, it's kind of, again, that puffery, that kind of, already I'm cynical about the producers behind the current Star Trek. But these short treks, at least the first two, have nothing to do with Discovery. They are set around Captain Pike's Enterprise. One of the few things I liked about the second season in particular, the great Anson Mounts.
Full disclosure, I love him. I haven't seen the last 5 episodes of the second season. So.
Okay. I'm really interested when you finish the second season, your thoughts. And I hope you finish it before the third season starts sometime next year.
I'm going to try, Johnny. Things have been hectic, but yeah. I wasn't even watching the short treks, and I get a bunch of texts from you today saying, watch the short treks before we talk. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll have time. And you're like, no, watch them.
Well, because...
Like, hey, okay, I'll watch them.
Yeah, because, it's funny. Last week I talked to Rob Burnett about them, and Rob, of course, you don't have to ask. I mean, as I always like to say, if a show was called, Star Trek Klingon Latrine, Rob and I would be watching the show and have plungers and scrubbers in hand and go, okay, what's next? Point us to the problem and let's watch it. That'll be fine. And unfortunately, I think we're in the milieu of Klingon Latrine when it comes to these first 2 short treks that they gave us. Q&A was the first one, and we can start there. Mm-hmm. Spock's first day on Captain Pike's Enterprise. That's how I took it.
Right.
And he has at
the beginning. Well, is it? I guess so.
I thought it was kind of a prequel. Go ahead.
Well, she said that he was somewhere studying how was wherever you were or when.
Right.
And then, so I kind of took that as he was away, but you're right. I guess it was him coming on to the Enterprise. So yeah.
Yeah, and especially the way it ended and his little, comments to Pike and everything. Right. I mean, if not his first day, certainly relatively new to Pike and Pike's Enterprise. And number 1 is there, Rebecca Romaine, who I think in the second season, given the limited time she had, I have no fault to Rebecca Romaine. I think she embodies the character that was created by Majel Barrett quite well. And she's a great new version, just like Anson Mount, as taken over for Jeffrey Hunter. And I am among the fans that are like, yes, please, give us a Captain Pike's TV series. That would be terrific.
Yeah, I like him as Captain Pike a lot.
Yeah, and I think
I was very resistant to them doing Captain Pike and having him come on the show, and I was like, what are you doing?
Interesting. Because Marvel, very briefly, only 17 issues, had a Captain Pike comic series. It was really, really good. And in fact, it kind of ended in mid-story because I think that's when they lost the license from Paramount, so they kind of had no choice. And I've loved the Captain Pike novels I've read. In particular, there's a great one that D.C. Fontana, one of the classic Star Trek writers, wrote called Vulcan's Glory, and it even takes place on Talos 4 after the Menagerie, where Pike, is with Vina, and they're reunited, and he is, living his illusion life, but his mind is fine, and he and Vina communicate, and they flash back to a point when Spock was still on his Enterprise and to where he is now. And I thought it was amazing. And I mean, that's the thing. I think the character of Captain Pike fascinates me. But all that said, we don't get these in short treks, just very brief appearances by Ensign Mount as Pike. This first one, Q&A, it's number 1 in Spock. They're stuck on a turbo lift.
Right.
And first of all, what'd you think of it?
I would have done things differently.
Well, and I get that too. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, but hold on a second. Hey, get out of there. Sorry, one of my dogs. He smiled right away.
Yep.
And that whole secret thing. Oh, we're doing spoilers, I guess.
Oh yeah. No, we're spoiling these. Absolutely.
Yeah, that whole secret thing, like the whole singing thing. That really annoyed the hell out of me, and I'm thinking, oh boy, all I could think about was, Johnny's not going to like this. Johnny's not going to like this. And my wife was like, "Why? I thought it was cute." And I'm like, because I was watching it with her.
Sure.
And I'm like, no. I wouldn't have had him smile. I would have had him sing or recite the lyrics. That was okay. And then when she gets lifted up out of the turbo lift, that's when I would have had him smile when she wasn't looking.
In a appreciative way of her physical attributes?
Well,
or just doing himself. You see, I went dirty. I'm thinking dirty. I got to be honest, man.
I guess it could have been the double meaning. I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking like I would have shown him smile when she wasn't.
So, right, she didn't see him smile. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But the whole point of the episode was that she saw him like enjoying himself and smiling. Well, first of all, the turbo lift, and I'm the last guy that nitpicks about the way that they have upped the technology, because I think it's interesting, and also, hey man, you got the budget, show the budget. By all means, let's have a more elaborate space battles. And I mean, that's the honest truth. As much as I rag on Discovery, from a pure production design and execution standpoint, I think, God, it's an A-level show. The effects are always amazing. But
absolutely, yeah.
But I have to agree that to choose to design the turbo lift and make it almost like one of those cable cars in like a Swiss chalet where you're going from mountain to mountain or whatever.
Right.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's a spaceship. You don't waste.
Right.
There's no wasted space on space stations or spaceships. We know this in the 20th century. They pretty much say that as well in the 23rd and 4th century on Star Trek. So I just felt like it was a waste of whatever.
I really attribute that to being, the original Star Trek series. I attribute that to being that kind of technology, but they've put like all this modern twist and flair on it, and it's just not melding. Well, like they're trying to do the old turbolift style with all this new upgraded CGI stuff that's just not working for me.
But just from a, forgive the phrase, logic standpoint, it's like you wouldn't have that kind of wasted space in a spaceship where, right. It's beyond like a regular elevator shaft. It's just like there's all this empty space and the turbo lift is on tracks. And like I said, it almost looks like a carnival ride. Rob compared it, before I saw it, Rob was talking about it like it was a roller coaster. And I'm like, oh, does it go out of control? And are we going to see it like whipping around the ship or whatever? And it was like, no, it's just, it's on these tracks. And literally, you could have a dozen people flying around the turbo lift, the car, to like fix anything. And it's like, no. Yeah. That just, again, that really, it's dumb. It doesn't, it's like the people that are designing this stuff aren't talking to the writers and saying, or somebody in the room isn't just going, this is a spaceship.
It's like no one's ever seen an actual elevator,
right? And it doesn't, and it's so unnecessary. I mean, that's the other thing is it's like there really is no point to it. It could have been a traditional turbo lift that we've seen in Kirk's time and Picard's time and whatever, and instead they do that. So that was just weird and dumb, but dumb.
When I was watching this, I'm like thinking, Johnny hates this episode, but from just talking to you just about the turbo lift, I see that you hate it even more than I thought.
Well, honestly, man, I swear to you, every week, I'm like, God, I hope it's a good episode. God, I hope I really like this. Because I love Star Trek. Again, right. I blew off The West Wing to watch Star Trek Voyager when they were both brand new. And The West Wing obviously is like one of the best TV shows ever. And at least from my standpoint, it's one of Aaron Sorkin's greatest accomplishments as a creator. And I'm watching, warmed over Next Generation in the form of Voyager. I mean, I think Voyager. I always say like a third of Voyager's episodes I think were really exceptional. So I don't totally rag on it, but there were a lot where I'm like, yeah, we've been here before. So anyway, but back to Discovery and everything. Yeah, it's just. I don't. Who's writing this stuff? There's that. I think there was that Monkeys episode where they've got a native. Who writes this stuff? And that's literally like always echoing in my head because boy, especially when we get to the Trouble with Edward, the second one. But back to Q&A.
Oh yeah, I can't wait till we get to that one.
Oh God, once again, like you said, Spock is smiling. They are obsessed with explaining why Spock smiled in the pilot, and there are a handful of first season episodes where Spock smiles.
Right.
He's smiling at Uhura when she sings. The episode, I always forget the name of it. Balance of Terror, I want to say, when they fight that Romulan ship, and they are able to look inside the Romulan ship, and they see that Romulans look like Vulcans, and there's that one racist crew member that really, doesn't trust Vulcans, let alone Romulans and everything.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Smiles
absolutely.
then.
He smiled, and he smiles. But what seemed out of place to me was that he did it right off the bat in this short episode to someone who's basically unknown to him.
Yep.
And Spock wouldn't do that. He would be in control, especially at that time.
Agreed.
Especially with someone like that and coming onto the ship.
Well, agreed. See, I think the Discovery writers really want Spock to be not only green as far as being a Starfleet officer, but also still hashing out his Vulcan and human sides. And again, for 50 years of storytelling, and God, especially, you've seen that animated series episode Yesteryear, when he goes back in time.
Yeah.
And he sees his young self. It's like, no, Spock understood who he was. It was the people around him who didn't. He's one of the best Vulcans ever, but the Vulcans wouldn't accept him because he's half human.
Exactly. Yeah, and the humans wouldn't accept him because,
Yeah, it's much more... It's Discovery and the Star Trek current producers, they lack subtlety. And I think when we talk about both of these short treks, it's very apparent that they lack subtlety. And and the other thing that bothers me is, and dude, I think I'm liberal as hell. I am thrilled that people of color and women are getting more seats at the table creatively and also in stories. And women are the heroes of their own stories and are not, as my buddy Kelly Sue kind of calls them, sexy lamps. And that cracks me up. But it's like, you could point to. Oh, God, now I'm blanking on her name from the original Transformers movies. The brunette that's so beautiful. And she was in the Jonah Hex movie. I can't think of her name right now. But she's basically a sexy lamp. But anyway, Spock, once again, learns how to be more Vulcan first.
Well, I agree with everything you said. I'm sorry I interrupted, but, what they say is, like, women can't do anything.
Right.
Except tell us how to do everything right.
Well, and I get that to a degree, but it just seems like the writers of current Star Trek diminish a lot of men characters at the service of showing, hey, this is a strong woman, and by the way, she's going to show a man how to do it right. And once again, we got that from.
I have seen that in a couple. I felt that in a couple episodes. Yes.
Well, when you finish this second season, I think you'll see it more because the whole thing is like Spock is a better Vulcan because of his human sister, Michael Burnham, and Spock is a better Vulcan because number one is there to tell him how to act on the Enterprise in Q&A. I don't buy it, and I think I think it diminishes the established characters to promote the new characters, and in this case, once again, a woman is telling Spock, no, I'm sorry, this is how you do it. I don't buy that. Like we said earlier, I think Spock was already very Vulcan by the time of even Pike's Enterprise, and certainly by the time of Kirk's Enterprise. And it just, I just think it's cheap, and you really are diminishing a beloved 50-plus year character to promote these new ideas that you're doing. I think it's wrong,
well,
and I think it's cheap.
You and I have had this discussion about how I don't like Discovery. I mean, I like Star Trek Discovery, but I don't like it because of they made this main character Spock's sister.
Yep.
There's no mention of her anywhere before this, in the old series or anything like that. If there was, then I can understand why they went this route. But why couldn't they just take a different character? Why couldn't they have done Pike? Why couldn't they have done, focusing on number one, Rebecca Romaine's character?
Yes.
Why couldn't they have done any of that instead of linking this to Spock and having it? Well, they can link it to Spock, but why does it have to be his sister? Why couldn't it be someone that maybe he was in love with or something like that at some point? I just found it weird that they're trying to force this.
Yeah.
By making Burnham be, his sister that no one's ever heard of or from before.
Right. Well, that's what and dude, again, I'll use the word because everyone's afraid of using it and be like, well, you're obviously anti-woman if you use that phrase. It's a Mary Sue. Michael Burnham is a Mary Sue. She is the solution to everything. She is the guiding force. There's a line, and forgive me if I'm spoiling a little bit because you might not have reached this episode yet. But there's that character on Discovery that is like 80% cybernetic, and at one point she says in the story, "Michael, I know what's happening now. It's all about you."
Right.
And my answer was,
that part,
okay. So I'm like, of course it is. It has been for 2 seasons. But with number one and Q&A in particular, God, what a missed opportunity. Because, again, if you're a ridiculous Star Trek fan like I am, there have been books that have examined the relationship between number one and Spock. And it's funny because Rob is like, number one's like the hot prom queen, and Spock in Q&A is like the awkward freshman who knows she's like amazing but doesn't know how to approach her. I never saw it that way. I really did see it like, oh my God, this is another alien who appreciates logic and is a very, scientifically minded, clinical thinker, and that he just admires her as a peer or maybe as a mentor, but not to the degree that we got in Q&A. And these short treks in particular, I think, are a great opportunity to get deeper into character. And I guess they did, but again, they went the cheap route. They go for it's Star Trek for dummies. They really should frame the title sequence and make it look like those yellow and black books that we grew up with. And because it really is. And honestly, I am interested in what your wife, as a non-Star Trek fan, thought of this, because it really is more like if you just drop in and be like, oh, okay.
Well, I was just about to say that they're trying to thread the needle of having new Star Trek fans watching this, and people like us that are like, no, it has to be this way. It has to be Kirk and Spock type thing. Right. Which we're not. We're
at least the
Star Trek.
The Trek dynamic.
We're more open to things that they think we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the Trek dynamic that even when Kirk and Spock weren't there in Deep Space Nine and Voyager and Next Generation, I always say that that's my short answer to people like, why don't you like Discovery? And it's like, because Next Generation, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine, nobody was Kirk's grandson or Spock's ancestor. You didn't need that. The ideas of Star Trek that they promote through the Federation or Roddenberry's feeling of where Earth people should be hundreds of years from now, accepting of other cultures and all that stuff, that's always there. The whole mantra of seek out new worlds and, new life and new civilizations, that's always there. And this is not, again, they've dumbed it down, and they think they're incredibly diverse. I'm sorry, I stepped on your point, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah,
in terms of that's the idea they're trying to promote.
That's the idea, and I was just going to say that they're trying to thread that needle, but they're doing a poor job of it. They may be placating to the new Trek fan because they don't know any better, but to us, they're really losing us as an. I don't know if they're going to lose us as an audience, but they're annoying me as an audience. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be a hater. I don't want to be a troll. And I forget what comic creator I was reminded of who said most critiques start with, I wouldn't have written it that way.
Right.
And it's like, and you said it earlier, and I get it. And I know that's really the heart of what I'm saying too, I guess. But it's not that, I would have written a better story. It's, we've gotten better stories for 50 years that are smarter and challenge us. And that's why I say it's Star Trek for Dummies, because these stories don't challenge us. They are really, really base in the worst possible way. And by the way, as I always like to point out about Michael Burnham, instead of making her Spock's sister, wouldn't it have been more interesting if she were raised by another Vulcan family? And that you could even have episodes where that Vulcan father could have sat down with Sarek and say,
it could have been that simple, yeah.
And really, and I think, and even have her meet Spock as a human that's growing up on Vulcan. And
they could have been best friends.
Or even just put together in terms of, Spock has a human side, you're raising a human on Vulcan, maybe this would be good for both of them to meet each other and understand each other and stuff. So there could have been interaction with Spock.
Even that I would have bought over.
Sure.
This is his sister.
Well, again, it would have made for more intelligent conversations and interesting insight in personalities and characterization. But again, they go for the base. They go for, and really making her Spock's sister. And oh God, I mean, please, I hope you do finish second season, because there's a few cringeworthy conversations where I'm just like, okay, I guess, whatever. So, but yeah, I agree with you about the singing. I mean, I'm okay with, and I do. It's like when in the older Star Treks when they say you've never appreciated Shakespeare until you've read it in the original Klingon. Yeah. So I kind of like the through line for Gilbert and Sullivan. Being that people in the 23rd and 4th century are thinking about Gilbert and Sullivan. That's okay. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah, that didn't bother me. It didn't bother me that there was singing on the episode. It bothered me that she would open herself up like that immediately to him. It didn't bother me that he was singing, because she said, "Oh, is it annoying you that Spock is singing?" Because when they were doing it, I was like, "Oh boy."
Your wife asked that question. Go on.
But she goes, "Is it bothering you that Spock's singing?" I'm like, "No, it doesn't bother me that he's singing. It's that he laughed at the end of it."
Yeah. Again, and they are obsessed. They are obsessed with explaining. Oh no! Spock laughed, and it's like, no, dummies. No Star Trek for Dummies. The reason why Spock was laughing was they hadn't figured out his character all the way yet, or he was not laughing, smiling. It's just like that he was bemused by humans or whatever. And then as Nimoy and the writers kind of figured it out, it's like, no. Yeah, Spock has emotions, but it is better if he really is poker face, and it really is only in the most extreme moments that you see him. And it's certainly even more interesting that he's haunted by that side of him. God, Journey to Babel, when you first meet Sarek and Amanda, his parents, and he's trying to explain to his mother why he can't be at his father's side, and even the rift between them. And you get a real emotional Spock trying to explain to his mother. He respects his mother. That's the thing, man. And also the through line, especially like the midpoint of the first movie, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, when he mind melds with V'ger and suddenly realizes that a part that was always part of him, where it's like, oh, I need my human side. And it gives me more perspective and wisdom accepting who I am and what I am capable of because of my human side. It's making me a better Vulcan and a much more logical person.
And I'm all for character growth.
Sure.
Especially as a writer. But this is the beginning of Spock.
Right.
And they're using all of this to try and endear him to the audience, but it's not Spock.
Right.
To me.
I agree.
And that's what's annoying me.
Yeah, and like I said, I really think it was more I understand who even again going back to the animated series with the yesteryear episode, and also where he might have been in the Enterprise in Pike's Enterprise, based on the novels that we've gotten, and just the Spock character in general. It's like no, he's more comfortable with himself and understands what to show and what not to show. He didn't need number one to tell him that, but again. It makes number one that much stronger of a character. Spock became a better Vulcan because of number one in such a blatant way. And I think they could have achieved the same thing if they had shown the number one that we see in the cage and also in some of the novels and things when they've used number one. Because she only appears in the cage and obviously in the menagerie.
Right.
But yeah, you could show that she is... I mean, and Roddenberry himself said the network didn't like number one. And they didn't like Spock, so he gave a lot of number one's attributes to Spock as they move forward. And that was his solution to kind of, keep the ideas of both characters and everything going. So, again, it's infuriating. But then again, like you said, if you a bunch of newbies that are watching, this Star Trek stuff for the first time, I thought it was fun. Oh, I liked it. And it's like, okay. And again, then we sound like, I guess, the Star Wars trolls, where, you just don't get it and you don't want change. And it's like, change is fine, but don't change the established stuff that we have.
What happens now if you have a new fan who's watching this for the first time and getting into the Star Trek mythos? What happens if this new fan now goes back and watches classic Star Trek? Are they going to find that Spock is not the same?
Well, frankly, I don't know if they will watch it because the pacing,
I'm not saying
the look
they will,
and the pacing of the 60s show,
right.
I think is a turnoff to a lot of people under, I'm just throwing an arbitrary age out, 35, 40.
Yeah, completely understand. But what I'm saying is if they do and you get somebody who gets into that, what happens when they don't find the same Spock?
I don't know.
What happens when they don't find the same personality there?
I mean, Nimoy obviously was older, even not so much on the cage, but certainly, the original series is 10 years after what we're getting right now, and they keep saying that. That's pretty blatant. So I suppose they think, all right, well, you're seeing a much more mature and more poker face Spock, for lack of a better word. So I don't know. I assume that's the case, and that's like, okay, and again, he's taking the lessons that number one gave him in Q&A, and at the end when Pike says, have you never been, amazed by whatever, and it's like, I do, but we keep it to ourselves. I mean, so yeah, I mean, he's like by the end of the episode, and certainly in season 2 of Discovery, when he's in the right state of mind, he's very Spockish. I got no problem with Ethan Peck. Again, it's never the actor; it's the material they're given, and the same goes for Rebecca Remain, who really delighted me in season 2. And this episode, while they gave her a chance to say bullshit, I'm glad that they're staying consistent that we swear a lot in Star Trek Discovery for completely unnecessary reasons.
Right?
She could have said ridiculous, she could have said nonsense, but she said bullshit, and it's like, okay, I guess, whatever. I mean, when Tilly says fuck. In season 1, and it's like, come on, man. But anyway, let's move. I mean, is there anything else to explore as far as Q&A goes? I have nothing further to say about the episode.
No, thoroughly eviscerated.
We got it like a fish, as Jimmy Stewart said in The Shoot Us with John Wayne.
Zuzu's pedals.
There they are. All right, and let's move on now to the Trouble with Edward, a Tribbles episode.
Oh boy,
man! I like H. John Benjamin. I like Archer. So, I like Dr. Katz. I like the actor a lot.
Well, I'm going to let you...
No, I'm done. And I'll let you start. Go ahead.
Watching it with my wife, she goes, where do I know that guy from? And I'm like, oh, well, he's the voice of Bob's, Bob Burger and Archer, and
now the Arby's commercials. Too.
She goes, no, I've seen him in something. I'm like, oh, the Arby's commercials. And she goes, oh, that's right, the Arby's commercials. So then, as I'm watching the episode, I'm thinking, this is a commercial for the Arby's episode.
That's hilarious.
Because all he's wanting to do is eat these tribbles.
I didn't even make that connection, but you're right.
But I'm like, that's what this is. I'm like, yeah. First of all, I'm like, oh boy, Johnny's going to be angry. Oh boy, I'm angry. Oh boy, this is so stupid. Oh my God, what did they do? And she goes, I thought it was a cute episode. I'll be, yeah, but they just threw away 50 years of Star Trek right there.
Yep. And also, and it started so promising. I like that one of Pike's crew members.
He was an idiot right away.
Well, but
such a smart guy, he was an idiot.
Well, yeah, but also let's start with the captain. Hey, that's awesome. And I guess she's in that anime, or I forget.
Well, there goes your whole theory about strong women, because she screwed up big time.
Well, yeah, and it's not her fault. Obviously, it's Edward's fault. But no, like when she was on the Enterprise, and Pike is giving her advice of how to be a captain. Don't let him, see you whatever screw up or whatever. Or I forget what his line is. But it's like, okay, cool, that's interesting, and there's an interesting start, and a different kind of ship. I guess we've seen that design either in the battle scenes of Season 1 or 2. I don't nitpick enough to remember where we first saw him, but that's cool. New ship, okay, fine, science vessel, great. And, everybody's there in the first meeting, and yeah, it's like H. John Benjamin, Edward, fuck up, how you doing, fuck up. Yeah. And it's like, why is this guy even, from the first moment, how did this guy make it all the way through Starfleet Academy, and he's there? Because, compare him to Barclay from Next Generation and
I like Barclay.
I love Barclay. Because they establish his smarts along with his quirks.
Right.
And it's like, no, this guy's a genius. He just has some problems, interacting with people. He's shy. He's not stupid. He's not vindictive.
Right.
And I'm like, there's no way in hell this guy, even if he made it out of the academy, would have made it beyond a year or two serving on a ship or at a starbase. Because it's like, no, you're flying in the face of what Starfleet's all about in terms of, Rob always, I always cite Rob Burnett because he is such a diehard Star Trek fan. I mean, I am a novice to his chess master knowledge of Star Trek back and forth. And he's right. It's like Starfleet is the extrapolation of NASA. These are the best and the brightest. These are the top people that are exploring space because they need to be. And I didn't get that from him other than, I guess he's got some genetic knowledge in terms of genetic manipulation. But you're dumb. You're saying I'm dumb. It's like, who? And man, it was written by Michael Chabon, the Cavalier and Clay writer, the Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. It's like, dude. I mean, he is to me one of the best nerd writers in terms of smart nerd stuff.
I don't pick up on names and stuff like that. Was that the writer who left? The writer's room?
No. Michael Chabon is actually, after things started in the production of Star Trek Picard, he became the showrunner. And it's funny because, like when I talked to Rob, and Rob's like, I don't know, man, I don't know. He's a great novelist. That doesn't make him a showrunner. I'm like, no, dude. This is a legitimate nerd. One of the best things that Michael Chabon, he wrote Wonder Boys, the novel and the movie that Tobey Maguire and Michael Douglas made in the early 2000s or late 90s. Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, which is about the golden age of comics, and that character, the escapist, that he created. He's written really great comic book stories. He's written great novels and short stories. One of my favorite things that he ever wrote was, there's a story that they tell on This American Life, and it's just an audio narration. And it's about a guy who ends up dating Lois Lane at a period where she and Superman break up, and they're not together. And it's all from his point of view. And he's like, Lois is fascinated by me because I'm so human. And she goes, she constantly pinches my belly and pinches my arms, and that I'm just so normal, and I'm not just tight muscles the way Superman is. and and they're having a great time. And Superman accepts it, but he's not crazy about it. Well, the guy loses his job, so Superman makes him his sidekick. And he has to go with them to a Justice League meeting, and all the lead heroes are in a room, and he's sitting there with a bunch of the sidekicks, and he's like, Robin thinks he's on top of everything, but he's stuck in the room with the rest of us sidekicks. And it's this really, really funny story, and it ends with Lois going back to Superman, and the guy's really bummed, he's depressed, and he goes to a bar, and he's like, there's the one guy I could tell my feelings to who will understand what I'm going through, and it's Clark Kent. And he's getting drunk, and he's like, man, if Superman were here right now, I would be in his face and say, you think you're so cool. And he's like, and Clark, the good friend that he was laughing. He's like, keep going. What else would you say to him? This is great. And it wasn't that Superman was being a jerk. It was like, no, that's Superman, man. He gets it. And he gets to be Clark Kent and be a good friend to this guy, even though the guy's not getting what he wants, and ultimately Superman is. But it's like, no, I feel bad for this guy, man. I'm gonna be a good friend. And it's like, Chabon gets it. And I'm sure he gets the broad strokes of Star Trek. And maybe he got rewritten in the writer's room. I have no idea. But man, Trouble with Edward, woof. And again, Star Trek for dummies. You're dumb. And I'm like, this is Star Trek dialogue? Are you kidding me? And then he's writing a letter to Starfleet complaining about this captain, and that basically she's dumb. You think I'm dumb. I didn't say you were dumb. You said I was dumb. Right. Good Lord! This is the dialogue we're getting.
And then he comes out in his underwear, and then
that's the coup de grace. That's the coup de grace for me. When he's in the corridor with no pants, it's like, oh fuck you. It's cheap laughs, man. Cheap CHEEP, like they spell it in Mad Magazine, and LAFFS. Cheap laughs, and it's like, dude, you would be laughed out of a comedy club with this kind of fucking material. And that said, I've watched so many YouTube videos of people reviewing this, and they all love it.
Really?
Rob didn't like it. A couple of the Star Trek haters who are much more angry and screaming with their negative reviews. They didn't like it, obviously. But so many, just like, oh, this was good, oh, this was bad. And there's a couple that are, I didn't like this, or I didn't buy that. But they're, oh yeah, I thought it was really funny. And it was great. It was H. John Benjamin kind of playing around. And even John Price, who I think is a great, fair-minded Star Trek critic, is like, well, I like H. John Benjamin. So, I mean, you can't take this episode seriously, but it was a lot of fun. I'm like, I didn't think it was that funny. I didn't think it was that... Like, for me, funny needs to be kind of clever or surprise me. Nothing surprised me. Other than the lack of adherence, and we can get into it, on the Tribble history as we know it.
Right. Well, that's the thing that, they just threw 50 years of that out. Who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah. Well, again, because they're more about, there's that South Park where the member berries. Remember this? Remember the Tribbles? Weren't the Tribbles fun? Here they are. And even going back to the first season when Captain Lorca, the original Discovery captain, who we find out is, of course...
he had one on his desk,
He had a Tribble on his desk. And it was just sitting there. And I mean, it's like, no, man, that's not how the Tribbles work. And also, this is 10 years before Trouble with Tribbles. And especially the way this unfolded, it clearly became a Starfleet incident worthy of an inquiry to this new captain.
That's what I said, because I was telling my wife that, the episode with Spock and Kirk on the original series never would have happened.
Right.
Because of this.
Well, they would have gone to the computers. Oh, Jim, this happened 10 years ago. Here's what the deal is with them. No, McCoy had to discover it all on his own. And it's like, wait a minute. Why isn't this in the records? It's like, this is bullshit. Again, bullshit. I'm throwing a flag. I'm like, you're fuck. And because, Francis, every
I told my wife you'd be angry.
Every panel, every con panel, every interview they do, they're like, oh, no. We're so about continuity. We hear the fans. We are doing everything we can to make this stuff fit in continuity. No, you're not.
Except for this episode.
Well, except for this episode and Spock's sister, and I mean, it's a fucking laundry list. The way they depict Section 31, which I understand is happening and it's underway. It's in development, but I know people that are working on it already. So it's crazily happening already. So it's like, all right, whatever. And God, man, I am praying because two of my favorite comic book people and TV people, Julie and Shauna Benson, they're writing for the Nickelodeon Kids show, the Star Trek show.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see what that's like, and hoping for the best because I'm like, I love them. They're adorable and they're great. They're great people, and I want them to succeed, and I want their shows to be great. But man, this trouble with Edward. Well, and also, as someone else pointed out, that was kind of even more angry and negative than I'm being about this episode. So Edward manipulates the triple DNA to multiply rapidly with human DNA. That doesn't make sense. Wouldn't it have made more sense if it was rabbits? Or, I don't even know, other Earth species that, procreate at a rapid way. Roaches? I don't know. Roaches would have made sense because essentially it becomes this infestation. And they multiply a hell of a lot faster than the Tribbles do on the original series. I mean, the Tribbles were a benign obstacle because they weren't like, vicious in any way. God, at first, watching the trailers, I'm like, are we getting...
maybe that explains it, because they became stupid once they were injected with his DNA.
I guess, yeah, I guess. But again, it's that governing and, thought of, okay, it's a Starfleet incident. Why isn't this in the ship's libraries when Kirk and Spock discover them? I mean, and that's the thing, man. They've done, they were able to, DS9 goes back into that actual episode. And, to put it in coloring book terms, they stay within the lines. They give us an interesting story that can fit without hurting the original story. Again, these guys claim that they are all about continuity. Bullshit. They're not. They're lying. They're lying through their teeth, and they don't care. They don't think it's that big of a deal. And again, because it's the Tribbles. Fuck, the Tribbles are fun. Yeah, I hear the Tribbles. And even as I was talking to you off the air, and this was okay. They did a. I would say watch it again after the credits. If folks who have watched it haven't seen it, stick around because there is a breakfast cereal commercial with Tribbles, and that was okay. I thought that was funny. That was cute. That was certainly better than the 12 minutes of bullshit we got. And yeah, man, I didn't buy H. John Benjamin's character. I genuinely felt bad for the captain, which obviously I think we're supposed to. And boy, that's a missed opportunity. At least they showed, for the first time, there's a woman that fails, but of course it's at the expense of a white man that she fails in the eyes of Starfleet. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Tell us a Tribble story, whatever. This will be interesting. How are they going to make this fit between the lines? Well, they didn't. They were like a 4-year-old with a coloring book. They colored across the lens. They don't care.
Yep.
Star Trek for Dummies, sir. And yeah, man, when he showed up with no pants, I kept trying to take a screen capture, and they might have to do it on like CBS All Access. Because I was even thinking, my YouTube channel finally reached 1,000. I'm going to start doing more video, and I really was like, oh, maybe this would be a great like first thing to show, and then be like, okay. Pantsless H. John Benjamin on so many levels shows you what's wrong with the current keepers of Star Trek. They don't get it. Yeah. And yes, he has no pants on. They have no pants on.
Right.
They have no idea how embarrassing they look to those of us who have been longtime fans. And again, it's like, why would you piss off the longtime fans with shit like this? I don't understand. I do not understand.
Right. I mean, because we're watching the show too, and that's what annoys me.
Yeah, well, we're the core. I mean, it's like they say about when they want a nerd movie to go viral and explode with social media and stuff. It's like, no, you get the nerds first because they're going to preach to the choir and say, hey, this is awesome. You should go check it out. This is amazing. And again, I don't know. Again, it's like, well, they act like H. John Benjamin. You're just dumb. You don't get what we're doing here. You're dumb.
Right.
Okay, I guess. So,
but I'm thinking if you look at it through the lens of it was a plug for Arby's, I think it works.
Because their meat's really good.
Yeah.
They're basically all meat, and I have eaten them. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Again, even the animated series did a great Tribble episode, and again, it's just that they're an obstacle. The fact that they freak out with Klingons is hilarious.
And
but it's benign.
I think I'm mistaken because no, it's not. It's not Harvey Mudd who introduces the Tribbles in the original Star Trek. Right?
It's Cyrano,
another guy.
Cyrano Jones.
Yes.
Cyrano Jones.
Right.
Oh, my good keeper.
Right.
And he's, aren't they adorable and stuff? And it's like, yeah, they're, But again, and also, it's food that makes them multiply. They don't just spontaneously start fucking or whatever. It's like
another one was just shooting them out of its ass.
Yeah. Yes. Literally. Exactly. And it's like
that's right.
It's like it's like they watched a sizzle reel, a highlight reel of Trek scenes without actually getting into the nitty gritty of the stories and going, so what make the Tribbles tick? How do they work exactly? No need. Oh, they multiply a lot. All right, there you go. And I liked the basic idea that they were an infestation and got to the point where they fill up the ship. And it was almost like scary. But I was afraid because, Ichsan seems to be like swallowed up by the multiplying Tribbles. And I thought they were going to be cannibals or something like that. And I'm like, no, don't make them vicious. They're a nuisance. And they don't even know they're a nuisance. They're just purring and being. And it's like, no, that's why it's funny. Because they're very sweet and stuff until you feed them, and then holy shit, watch out.
Right. They're basically gremlins. Right.
Oh, that's true. Before you hit them with water and don't feed them after midnight. Yeah. Right. That's a good point. They're gizmos. They're like little gizmos. I love that movie. Well, before we move on to Joker, I wanted to your thoughts on the Picard trailer.
I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Go on.
I like Picard a lot, and I'm interested to see the series. But I don't know. It's a rogue Picard, I think.
That's fair. That's fair. Have you ever read that IDW Countdown book that came out right before the 2009 movie?
No.
It essentially is, I think, the bridge between Star Trek Nemesis, the last Next Generation film, and what we're going to get with Star Trek Picard. Because as they say in the trailer, that Picard led this successful armada, and I believe it was the evacuation of Romulus when Spock's red matter experiment failed, and their sun went supernova and it destroyed Romulus and all that stuff. And so they explain all that in the Countdown comic. Data's even in there, and I think they explain that it's B4 and that Data's engrams that were put into Data in Nemesis have finally kicked in. So that's how they explain that Data exists. And I'm sure they'll explain what happened to Data in the Picard series. I'm okay with him being a rogue because,
I'm okay with that too. It's just I don't know where it's going to lead, which I guess is part of the point.
And
why we're going to watch it.
I mean, Kirk had to go rogue and when to save Spock and go against Starfleet's wishes. And I am interested to see where the politics of the Federation are 20 years or 25 years down the line. I think that's interesting. I like the idea.
Interesting that they brought in 7 of 9.
100%.
As well.
That's exactly where I was going to go. I think it's very interesting the way that they're showing the Borg and also whatever involvement the Romulans had with the Borg. There is a YouTube, and I always forget, and I wish I could remember. Rob cited whose channel it was, but they did a whole 15-minute thing of making everything fit. And their theory, and I don't mind spoiling it because, again, we don't know what we're going to get in January when the show begins. And, of course, there is a short trek that will run before the Picard series starts. The last short trek of this season will be a Star Trek Picard prequel in some way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. And it's like a week or two before the end of January when Star Trek Picard starts. But this YouTuber theory is that, the Romulans obviously cloned Picard to create Shinzon, Tom Hardy's character in Star Trek Nemesis.
Right, yeah.
So, and they believe that the girl in trouble in the Star Trek Picard trailers, and this is kind of a well-known open theory, that it's Picard's daughter, and that Locutus likely mated with the Borg Queen.
Ooh,
or they took Locutus's DNA and created, this girl, and then maybe that she is, Picard's daughter that way. But they made everything fit from IDW's Countdown, which I highly recommend. It's a very good Next Generation story with Spock and Picard and Data, and it is a good setup for what we got and also Nero, of course, in the 2009 JJ movie. And again, I do believe that Discovery is definitely trying to link up what happened in the JJ movies to, and that's the Kelvin universe is where we end up. But we do start in the Prime universe, and they refer to Nimoy as Spock Prime. So they're doing everything they can to tie what they set up in in the 2009 Star Trek movie to Next Generation and the events of the Star Trek universe up until post Nemesis and before Spock's attempt with Vulcan or with Romulus. So I think all that's going to be panned out in Star Trek Picard. And seeing the trailer had me very optimistic because, especially the longer trailer. I mean, there's Riker, there's Troy. I don't even know. Like, they didn't really. All they showed was a quick shot of Hugh as more of a human, much like 7 of 9 is looking and acting much more human than she did back in the Voyager days. And I buy all that. I mean, it's 25 years later, and it's interesting to. And I'm looking forward to seeing Hugh and what his character will look like after the events of Next Gen and where they left him, and where he is now and stuff. So I'm intrigued by all that. But also knowing that it's the same basic writers that were doing these short treks, now I don't know. I'm back in doubt again. I mean, I really was optimistic about Picard until I've seen these short treks, and now I'm like, all right, I don't know what we're going to get.
Unless they're doing these short treks as out of continuity or just fucking with you type episodes.
The previous short treks, there's one.
We're all intertwined, right?
Yes, and actually. There's one, if you haven't seen it, Calypso, with the lone. It's set in the future, and
yes, I did see it. That was amazing.
That ties into the third season of Discovery, and I think you can understand why. So, and if not, then watch those last 5 episodes, and it'll make more sense.
Yeah, I haven't seen the last 5, so that's probably why.
Well, then I would avoid the.
But that episode, that short trek was amazing.
And Michael Chabon wrote that as well, and that was another reason why I'm hopeful for Picard because I think Michael Chabon can write a good story and an interesting story. And as a standalone, I thought that was excellent.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know. We've got we're getting 6 short treks. We've had 2, and we know that one of them is going to be that Picard prequel in January. So whatever we're getting in November and December and early January, I don't know. I really don't know.
Maybe the next one they'll fix the Trouble with Edward one.
Yeah, I hope so. Exactly. Jesus. Yeah. So
I remember I watched the Q&A one first, and I'm like, oh, Johnny's not gonna like this. And then the Trouble with Edward came on. I'm like, oh boy, he's gonna have problems with this one.
And Rob hadn't seen the Trouble with Edward when I talked to him, and I'm like, and it was because it was the same night that it dropped, and he's West Coast. And I'm like, have you seen it yet? He said, no. I said, dude, your head's going to explode. I mean, because my head exploded. Right. And that's all I said. I'm like, I'm not going to say another thing. He goes, well, I'm already hating it because of the trailer. I'm like, it gets worse. And it did. It was dumb on so many levels. It was just dumb. And no, I don't believe you would have been in Starfleet, Edward. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Right.
Because, good Lord, if he's going to make it through Starfleet like that, then remember the episode where they go to that Earth that is all Roman?
Right.
Bred in circuses, and it's from the original series. And you meet Captain Merrick, who was a freighter captain who washed out from the Academy. And it's like, well, fuck, if Edward can make it, I mean, why isn't Captain Merrick, piloting a starship? Because he even says to the prefect, the governor, he's like, you don't understand, man. He's a Starfleet captain. That's a special kind of man that can captain a Starfleet ship. I know. I didn't cut it. And it's like, well, fuck, man. You're like, summa cum laude compared to Edward, for Christ's sake.
Right.
Jesus Christ. So, yeah. Oh, got me so mad. Yes, you're right.
Sorry.
I know. Well, and again, this isn't about my likes. I guess it is because it's my show.
It is.
But and again, I just
you speak for all the Trek fans.
And really, folks, if you're digging Discovery, you got to explain to me why. John at wordballoon.com. Feel free to email me and explain it to me, Lucy.
You and I have had this conversation. I like Discovery as long as in my mindset, I take it out of the timeline.
Continuity, yeah.
As long as I take it out of continuity, I'm okay with it. To me, it's an alternate Star Trek.
Right.
I'm okay with that. But being in the continuity, I got lots of problems with it.
That's the thing, man. I mean, because Ron Moore's Galactica, and we all love it.
I loved it.
But he said from the beginning, and at first he got pushed back as well, we're rebooting Galactica. This isn't Lorne Green. Get over it. And it was, well, you made Starbuck a girl. Fuck you. You suck. Oh, bring Dirk Benedict back. Bring Richard Hatch back.
Oh, my God. That show was so good.
It was amazing.
Right.
One of the best 21st century science fiction shows, if not the best.
Yes.
And I have to confess, and I'm hearing, hey, man, if you really miss smart science fiction, watch The Expanse, especially now that it's all on Amazon, and the fourth season will be on Amazon moving forward. Everyone tells me how brilliant it is, and it's like, of course it is. It's based on a series of novels that can take the time and world build with intricacy and everything, and really give you a full map and characterization of, no, this is where everything is, and this is why. And again, no, we're Star Trek for dummies, man. I mean, and also... But and like you said, if they would just say, all right, it's a reboot, fine. Or, all right, finally, this third season, I'm sure you already know, is set in the future and everything. Chef of the future. If they had put it in the future as well, the way the Klingons were acting, I can accept their xenophobia if it's like, something, we've been friends with the Federation too long. We've lost the Klingon way. Right. We're splitting off. Okay, fine. I buy that. I buy that argument.
Right.
But they are so anti what we got before in Klingon, and also cannibalistic, which I think is gross. And it's like, man, you really... And again, it's because of people like Ron Moore, who wrote the Klingons more subtly and gave us more layers to the Klingons with the way they were portrayed from the Next Generation through all the other shows. I mean, you understood the Klingons better. They're mustache-twirling villains. Section 31, mustache-twirling villains. All this shit. And it's like, you guys are assholes. You guys are just shitting on continuity. And claiming that you're adhering to it. That and, man, I don't know if you saw it, but, and it's still in my craw. You mentioned the Walter Mosley incident earlier. He was the older writer that dropped the N-bomb in the writer's room and got ratted out by human resources and stuff. The doctor from Discovery, Dr. Culver, Wilson Cruz is the actor. They had all the living doctors from all the shows. Obviously, DeForest Kelley isn't there, but everybody else was there. From Gates McFadden, Alexander Siddig playing Bashir, and John Billingsley, who was Phlox. Everybody was there, and Wilson Cruz. And they kind of went down the line. They're like, what do you think your hallmark of your show is? And with Wilson Cruz, he's like, well, it's diversity. We're doing things with diversity that have never been done with Star Trek before. And the older actors are like, we beg to differ. Star Trek's always been diverse. And John Billings is like, I think it's great that you guys have a gay relationship on your show. Phlox was bisexual. And we stated very blatantly on Enterprise. And all the audience started to applaud. Because it's like, because the audience knows a little bit better than this new Coke Trek. Star Trek Discovery is the new Coke.
And Dax.
Yes. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Dax wasn't there because she wasn't a doctor, but it's like...
Right, but I'm saying diversity of characters, Dax on
DS9.
Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. No, and also, granted, it was done metaphorically, but there was that one Next Generation episode where Riker falls in love with the single-gendered species that kind of drums out the idea of man and women relationships and stuff. And I mean, everybody knew what they were talking about. They couldn't do it blatantly.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, no, they've addressed those things. And no, they didn't do it as blatantly as obviously Star Trek Discovery can now because of the acceptance of the gay lifestyle where we're at today, or at least partial acceptance, depending on, I guess, where you live currently in America or around the world. But, it's like, it's not a new thing. And again, it kind of gets me mad because it's like, my favorite example is, somebody had written a critique of a Spider-Man book and said, wow, this never happened to Spider-Man before. And an older reader is like, well, actually, it happened in the 60s and 70s. Oh, well, that was before I was born. And it's like, yeah, but it still happened, and that doesn't mean it didn't count just because you're not aware of it. And that this whole generation of Discovery creatives, from actors down to the writers, it's like, I guess you never watched Star Trek, and that's okay. You don't. Well, from the actor's standpoint, why would you? It's okay.
Well, I get very. I was reading something online. It was on Facebook, and someone was talking about something that happened to them. Went to the hospital or something like that, and they were using an analogy about. And I forget what the analogy was, forgive me, but the analogy was something from an old TV show or movie, and it dawned on him that they didn't know what he was talking about. And he kind of went off on like, why don't these people know? And I'm like, it's fine that they don't know, but when you're informed, don't act mightier than thou because you didn't know it. Or because, it was before I was born type thing. That just annoys me.
Yeah.
But,
because it's like being defiant because you don't know something. And it's like, no, knowledge works the other way. We get smarter because, I never knew that before. Well, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't realize Shane, the classic Western, was Yojimbo, the same story, or Magnificent Seven, another great old Western, was based on Kurosawa's Seven Samurai story.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's cool. Well, now I want to see it. Now I'm kind of intrigued. What is that, got? And there are certainly more modern, examples of that than, of course, being stuck in the past as I am. Nothing's coming to mind. Well, anyway, yeah, so... I swear, as we, unless you've got more to say about Star Trek in general, where it is right now, I am eternally hopeful and optimistic that please prove me wrong. Please make Picard an amazing show. I'm thrilled that Patrick Stewart wanted to come back. I'm thrilled that the cast members that they've already shown are in it. I'm hoping there's surprises. I hope Gates McFadden shows up because it does seem odd that with everyone that's coming back, that Beverly Crusher, the love of his life.
I'm sure. Yeah,
I hope that's a surprise that they're kind of holding back, and we'll see as the show comes out. Yeah, and I like the cast. Alison Pill from The Newsroom and Midnight in Paris.
Is that her? I thought that was.
Oh
her.
yeah,
I couldn't stand her in The Newsroom.
Well, I didn't like her in The Newsroom, but man, she was a great Zelda Fitzgerald in Midnight in Paris, and I've seen her and she's great in Scott Pilgrim versus the World. So I think she's a good actor, and I'm glad that she's there. Yeah, I didn't like her. Again, it's not her fault. It's the writing.
Right.
That was not good, Sorkin. These things happen. Did you see Mockingbird, by the way?
I did not.
I was just curious because I know you're Mr. First Nighter when it comes to New York theater, and
just can't do everything.
I understand. No, it's cool. It's cool. Well, anyway, yeah. Any other thoughts? Because I certainly want to talk Joker with you.
No. Do we need to kick it anymore?
Yeah, exactly. I think he's dead, Jim. It's fine. So, all right. Moving on to Joker. All right. I want to throw out our premise before we start, and that is, I think, and I'll be interested in your opinion. I think Joker is our first released superhero horror film, and I like it from that standpoint. I've got my problems with it, and we'll talk.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a horror film. I think that it is a deep, dark, fucking psychological thriller. You just, man, this this thing beat me down big time.
I understand. Yeah.
But I don't know that it was a horror film. I don't know that I would say that. But I'd like to hear your reasons why you think.
Well,
that.
I just think psychologically. I mean, it's in the same way, and maybe people don't regard Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer as that kind of film, but it is a dark film. I thought there were horrific moments. I certainly think, and again, we're spoiling.
Yes.
The scene midway. I mean, obviously, we saw Arthur's character broken down. And by the time...
Man, step by step.
Oh, yeah.
Step by excruciating step.
It was, it was like watching somebody pull, fingernails out of a hand or whatever. I mean, it was tough. But by the time we got to where he's with the little person clown and the other guy that was a jerk and totally set him up and got him to lose the gig, and he kills him, and he's going to kill the little person. You think he's going to kill the little person.
Right.
That I thought was incredibly suspenseful and horrific in a very scary way. And also the ending, which obviously was an homage to the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns comic when he's on De Niro's talk show. It's like the anticipation of where this is going to end, and it's not going to end well. So I that stuff reminded me...
Even though they were trying to lead you somewhere else with again, spoiler. They were setting you up that he was going to kill himself. You knew.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think he was going to kill himself at all.
Yeah, neither did I. But my wife was like, "Oh, I thought he was going to kill himself."
Interesting. I understand.
Yeah, so I'm like, I didn't see that. I knew exactly what was going to happen. I thought everybody in that audience was going to die.
Well, so did I. In that same way,
it was very sparing.
Yeah, in that scene, like in the Dark Knight Returns, it's Joker gas, which I mean, they drew it reasonably scary with the Joker gas and everything in the comic. But I have mixed feelings about the movie, but also I'm still thinking about the movie. So all that's
so here's something to think about then, because as I've been thinking about this since I've seen it, and I think about it more and more. You're led to believe the whole thing with him and the girl down the hall, which I thought was great setup and
execution.
Talking about it with my wife later, she said, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." I did right from the beginning. I said because their relationship just clicked too fast.
When he kissed her, that's when I'm like, this is in his mind.
Well, even then, before then, like the first time they got together after the hallway scene, I said to myself, I said, this is too fast. They're together now and hanging out. This is in his head. Then when it was revealed to be in his head, we get to the end, and I'm like, I don't know what was real and what wasn't throughout the whole thing. I started to question everything.
I understand, and I've heard that from other people as well. Go on.
Yeah, was the relationship with his mother real? Was the all of that stuff from his childhood real? Was any of it real? What was, what wasn't? I started to question a lot of everything.
I understand, and I've heard, like I said, I've heard other people say it, and I've also heard other people answer that and say, no, I think they did spell out what was real and what was fake, because they went back and showed us scenes of him in the hospital worried about his mother, and where he was there with the girl earlier. She wasn't there. By the way, did you recognize that it was Domino from Deadpool 2?
Oh, I didn't know.
Isn't that awesome? And I understand. And again, that's the strength of the actor. And shame on me, I'll look her name up while we're talking. But that is the strength of that actor, that she could give such different performances. And then when you see her, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's not like, they changed her hair or anything else. Right. It's like, no, that's her. And she was amazing.
Yeah, she was great. Even though I understand what you said, and I think I might be on the same page, I still question what was real and what wasn't. Like, it was just all, being in that psychological shining, moment in your head, like all of this is in his head. what's real, what isn't. And it still nags at me. And I know what you're saying, that they showed all that other stuff. My brain wants to believe you and say, yes, that's right. I'm on John's side. I agree with you. Then the other side of my brain starts to nag at me saying, I don't know.
And again, the best movies, it's like that great scene in Pulp Fiction when they got the briefcase from Marcellus, and you never see what's in the briefcase, but you just get that golden hue and everybody's reactions. I love movies that do that. I love movies that make you think and go, well, I don't know. I don't know which way it went necessarily. And certainly one of the films the Joker is based on, King of Comedy, the ending of that, and I think the ending has changed as society has changed, because Rupert Pupkin, the De Niro character in King of Comedy, gets arrested, gets thrown in jail, is a wannabe comedian. He stalks Jerry Lewis, the Johnny Carson cipher, and you think, because you've seen a bunch of scenes happen in his mind, conversations with Jerry Lewis that didn't really happen in real life and stuff, that the ending might be in his mind that he goes to jail, but then he gets out and he writes a book about his whole experience, and it ends with him on stage. And it's very weird because it's this, here he is, Rupert Pupkin, and there's just like this constant applause that doesn't change. Once again, let's hear it for Rupert Pupkin. And it's like, is this real, or is this another thing in his mind? So I like that. Now, watching King of Comedy and the reality TV society that we now live in, it's like, oh, absolutely, he would have written a book, and some dumbass promoter would be like, hey, I'm going to put him out because people are going to want to see the freak. Right. So, now back to the movie, because that does kind of tie into some things that happened in the story that took me out of the realism. I think, first of all, it's Todd Phillips. It's the guy who made the Hangover movies. Holy shit. So from that standpoint, hats off, man, for making such a dark, realistic, gritty movie.
But then he kind of ruined it with these comments that he made, right?
Oh, you mean publicly comments or in the film?
Yeah, publicly.
Haven't heard. What did he say? Tell me.
About...
Because I didn't want to
look him up. Yeah, no, this came out after the movie. Yeah. I just heard it. Something about how he can't make comedies, or isn't able to in today's society. You'd have to look it up.
No, I understand.
In today's society, he can't make comedies, which is what led him to this
Interesting.
movie.
Well, hey, man, he's an artist. I get that. That's okay. Yeah. I mean, because, again, we screw around on the Oh Yeah podcast, and I'll do my Trump imitation. Right. And I've told you, man, like, I got radio buddies who are like, oh, dude, you should, like, totally make your services available and imitate Trump. I'm like, it's not funny. And as it continues to happen, it's like, no, I can't find the humor anymore, other than putting him in the Marvel or DC universe and saying, I just got off the phone with Lex Luthor. He's a great man, whatever. And so I get that from an artistic standpoint. My problems, a couple story things bothered me. First of all, the catalyst of his gripe against the De Niro character. First of all, the De Niro character, as opposed to playing a character, it's Robert De Niro being Robert De Niro. Hey, how you doing? This is my show. Yep. You don't like my show? You can go fuck yourself. This is my show. It's like, okay, I don't know how he'd get like a Johnny Carson kind of show, although a friend of mine compared him to Morton Downey. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see him. Yeah, that's right. This is my show. Okay. I don't believe that a talk show host would pick on a failed open mic stand-up and go, hey, look at the video. Is this guy stupid? Right. Let's make fun of this guy. I'm like, no. Sorry. No. Don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Again, I know people like Tosh on Comedy Central was all about taking videos, but that's like stuff that people already put out on YouTube and stuff, and it's like, I just don't buy that. And also, his entire speech, while he's giving it on the talk show live, I'm like, security. Yeah. And then somebody said, well, this was supposed to be early 80s, so people weren't thinking like that. Bullshit. I'm sorry, television doesn't work that way. It's certainly not live television. No, sorry, that's wrong. That's very, very wrong. And it took me out. That took me out of the reality. There's a bigger issue that I'm sure we'll get into. But what were your thoughts about those things?
That didn't bother me.
Okay.
The talk show thing. I mean, you're there suspending belief. that really didn't bother me at all. I was okay with it. I just don't. I didn't really buy him as a talk show host, Morton Downey, or otherwise. I thought it was Robert. I thought it was Robert De Niro.
Yeah.
You know? So I see
funny.
what you say there, but
it was still. I still enjoyed it, but I'm just like, hey, how you doing? It's my show. Okay. Right. It's like,
yeah. But the thing about, whether it's real or not, because then, as we're talking, I'm thinking about it as well. But that whole thing, I love the setup with the card when he's laughing on the bus with the kid.
Yes.
I love that. But then at the end, I'm questioning, like, he even says to his mother, and I don't know if that's real or not. Is he talking to himself, talking to his mother? Is my condition even real? Like,
right.
He questions.
No, I understand
that.
that.
Why would they put that line in there if it wasn't to, throw this doubt in my head?
That's fair. No, that's fair, and I get what you're saying. I kind of took it as a moment of clarity. That said, and this is something that and again, Rob said this, Burnett, and I agreed with him, and we talked about Joker as well. I've read too many Batman Joker stories where I don't believe this person would become the criminal mastermind that would give Batman problems. I know it's the beginning of his story, but I just
I'm not sure, like, because I was thinking about that as well. Because, like, so wait a minute, society creates this Joker, he creates the Batman, and then the cycle just starts all over again. Is he the Joker that the Batman is facing later on? I'm thinking not, because he created all these other Jokers.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a very good point, Franco, and I did not think of that. That's a very good point.
It's all these. It's that cyclical nature, but it's also, is this real or not? And it's like, again, it's another. He's not the real Joker in my mind, or is he? If he is, he's much older than Batman, and he, and all the stuff that happens later on, or whatever. I don't know if this is an alternate universe, but
I think it is.
Talking
it's not. It's certainly like they've.
No, I understand that, but we're talking from the stance of, hey, we're comic book guys, and we've read all these stories already. We know a lot of Joker and Batman stories. So in that vein, is there another Joker that's coming later on?
That's a very fair point.
Create all these other Jokers.
Well, and I honestly think that knock I have against it, that's on me. I'm compromised for not taking the movie at face value and imprinting stories that I've read before onto this. And even when they floated that, misdirection of could he be Thomas Wayne's son, I'm like, literally, I couldn't help myself. Thank God I was in the last row, and there were a couple of rows of empty seats before they got to me. But as soon as, they put that out there, I'm like, bullshit. No. Sorry.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Not by.
Yeah, I thought that too. I'm like, really? They're going to go this route? They're going to cheap out like this?
Yeah, I did felt it was cheap,
and then when it wasn't, or is it? Because you're still not sure.
That's fair too.
You don't know if the mom or Thomas Wayne was telling the truth. Which those are the things I loved about this movie.
Well, they occupy my brain, so I must subconsciously like it too, because it is that story choice. And I mean, at first I'm like, I don't know, and I felt there was too much Batman mythos in that, and that, hey, I thought this was going to be his story, and especially when they made Bruce as young as they made him, it's like, well, really, what does Bruce have to do with it? It kind of bothered me that there was so much Batman story and Wayne story in there. I like it on one level, I dislike it again on another, because I've read too many Batman stories and Batman Joker stories. I like the idea that the Joker, literally going back to his first issue in Batman #1, that he's just this thing that's out there killing people and announcing he's going to kill people. I mean, that's the thing. For 1940s comics, the Joker was pretty goddamn scary. He really was, man. And then it got silly in the 50s and 60s, and thank God in the 70s, people like Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil and everything, they brought the crazy back. And obviously since then, Arkham Asylum and all the great Joker stories. I mean, God, Going Sane, Legends of the Dark Knight, J.M. DeMatteis, one of the greatest Joker stories, and a very humanizing Joker story where the Joker thinks he's killed Batman, and he puts flesh-colored makeup on and has a normal life and even meets a woman and is living this normal life, and then all of a sudden he realizes that the Batman's back, and he's like, oh, but I like this life. I don't want to go back, but he knows his true nature, and he can't go against his true nature. That, and I love, there's a moment in Scott Snyder's and Greg Capullo's Joker run where it's when Bruce is cured of needing to be Batman, and he's just Bruce. He's aware that he was Batman, but they kind of psychologically cure him from the need of needing to be vengeful and then going out every night and then solving problems. And he's on a park bench, and the Joker shows up, and he's in flesh-colored makeup, and he's like, you ever get the feeling that you're somebody else, and that the life you're leading right now is wrong, and you should really go back? And Bruce is about to say yes, and he goes, don't listen to that instinct. And essentially it was because if you come back, I'm coming back. And it was fantastic because it was really this great, chilling conversation. And, of course, Killing Joke, the end of Killing Joke, which is so sad that Alan Moore rejects these days. Because I really think that was a great moment when Batman's like, hey, I want to help you because this is going to end up with one of us dead if I don't. Can't you let me help you? And the Joker is very human. He goes, I'm too far gone, man. I can't do it. And that or Chuck Dixon had a great story where the Joker's dumped in a Lazarus pit. And, when you come out of the Lazarus pit for the first, couple hours, you're crazy. And for the Joker, he's sane. And he's like, oh, my God, all the killing, all the bodies, all the deaths I'm responsible for. And he's crying. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. And there's moments of that in this thing. But like I said, I don't know. But I like your idea that, and because I do think that I bought the thing of these killings have inspired a mob mentality about clowns and Joker, and I like it.
Oh
even,
my God, especially in today's society. Oh my God,
absolutely. Yeah. And also because they were like, hey, this is a one-off. This isn't part of the DC universe. All that shit, and then it makes a shit ton of money. And it didn't cost that much money to make this movie. This is like a Deadpool level budget for a movie, like $50 or $60 million, and it's already made like $500 million worldwide and over $200 million domestically. And at first we were like, well, Joaquin Phoenix is an actor. He'd never do a sequel. Bullshit. Because he's already said, I wouldn't mind returning to this. And it intrigues me of where they would go in a second movie and what they would possibly do. Right. And so I'm okay with the idea of I'd like to see another story in this world if they're if they're able to make another interesting movie. So yeah, man, like I said, I just felt there was too much Batman. I didn't like that they made Thomas Wayne a villain. Again, having read so many Batman stories,
but did they?
Well, exactly. Well, or at least even indifferent. I don't think. Right. I think Thomas Wayne. And again, I'm clouded by these Batman stories that we grew up with. Thomas Wayne set up Leslie Tompkins in her clinic that she had for Gotham and stuff like that. So I even if he knew he had an employee that was crazy like that, I think he would have tried to help her. If he knew.
That's the thing. I think there was a line in there somewhere that said they did try to help her. Or he did try to help her.
Oh, I didn't remember that. I love the scene.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm projecting.
I'd have to see it again. I don't know if I want to see it again either. By the way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no. Yeah, because it's so painful. It's going to be on HBO, obviously.
I did speak to at New York Comic Con. Art and I were signing at the DC Comics booth, and it was we'll save parts of that for the podcast, which is fun. But
by the way, Artie's not going to join us on this episode because he's going to see Joker tonight. Because we love Artie, but Artie's got kids and kids that need attention, and this is certainly not a movie he's going to take his kids to. And I know there's,
and also we're all on different schedules,
right. And I was going to say sometimes it does take Artie months before he sees a movie. So and that's why. And Scoot's away on business,
right.
So that's why I'm like, I really want to talk about this now, and we will readdress it with Scoot and Artie, and that's
I'd like to see what
because really, I mean that's like
because things in my brain might change by
and I mean that's the thing. Like if Artie were free, I'd want him later and not part of this conversation because I don't want him compromised by what we're talking about, and also I don't want him bored by what we're talking. Certainly not the Star Trek part, but yeah, all the Joker stuff too. I'm like, well, I don't know when Artie's going to see it, and I don't know if he knew. And also, I didn't even know if he'd want to see it because it's such a downer.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what he thinks.
Cannot wait to hear what he thinks. Absolutely, man. So there's a good tease for a future podcast coming up.
Yeah, when we were at New York Comic Con, we were signing at the DC booth, and Michael Uslan.
Oh, he came over.
He came over to talk to us.
Great.
And he's one of the producers
Absolutely.
on the movie. We were talking for a bit, but then he said, "Hey, have you guys seen Joker?" And we're like, "No," because it had opened that weekend, and our schedules were just jam-packed.
Sure.
And he goes, "Well," he goes, "I'd be." He gave me his card.
Oh, great!
And he goes,
"Go on.
I'd be interested to know what you think."
Well, I really good because I'm going to bug you
for
first.
To talk to him about it, but
no, I absolutely. Well, and honestly, he gave me his contact information years ago. I lost the card, and I've been trying to get back in contact with him forever because, as you know, he has held on to the Batman license since the 70s, well before the '89 movie. And anytime there is something Batman-related out there, he's a producer on it. And I think he's a good keeper of the license. I was just explaining to somebody about Dick Tracy and Warren Beatty. Because Warren Beatty made a similar deal to make that Disney Dick Tracy movie that he made in the early 90s. And in the early 2000s, Tribune Company, that owns the rights to Dick Tracy from a publishing and technically TV standpoint, they were going to reboot Dick Tracy for the WB, the CW, and also have a new Dick Tracy comic strip with Bendis writing it and Mike Oeming drawing it, which would have been perfect. And then Warren Beatty showed up and reminded everybody, I still have the option. And he made a TV special of Dick Tracy looking back at the movie that covered his obligation for the option. And it went to a judge, and the judge is like, no, Beatty still has the rights to be involved and say yay or nay. And he's like, nay. I know. Amazing. So, and I'm saying in contrast to that, I think Michael Uslan has been a great steward for the Batman world. And yes, he's been involved in the Nolan movies. Better or for worse, he was involved in the Zack Snyder movies and Justice League, at least using Batman's character. And that's fine. And I appreciate the ambition of Joker as a film. And I think it succeeds in a lot of ways. I had very mixed feelings. I gave it out of 4 stars, 2.5, but also said, if you're interested in seeing it, I recommend it to people.
Yeah, I still have mixed feelings.
Yeah, and I do too. But I got to say that the ambition and the execution, Joaquin Phoenix did a great job of acting. He was amazing. Oh God, I just had her name. I want to give props to the actress. What the hell's her name? Here she is.
I don't know.
Zazie Beetz. Zazie Beetz, who also played Domino in Deadpool, was the female lead in Joker. And God, the woman who played her mother was fantastic. I mean, that's the thing. All the acting was great. Yeah. And even De Niro sleepwalking through it was great. You know, I got no problem with that. Mark Maron, I got a little problem with just because I don't like superhero movies. But I'm in Joker with Robert De Niro. Yeah. It's like, fuck you. You know, it's like, just stand by your convictions and stuff. Don't be an asshole. Yep. But whatever, that's fine. I haven't heard him talk about Joker on his podcast. I confess, I do blow through his intro and get right to the interview and stuff. And shame on me because I always tell people don't blow through the commercials and stuff for Word Balloon. I know I'm an asshole. I can't help it. I'm sorry. Those guys make more money than I do. I'm gonna play that sympathy. Sorry, I need it more than they need it. I need it, but So there's enough good stuff, and the guy who played Thomas Wayne was fantastic. And I was starting to say, God damn, that Alfred scene was fantastic too.
Yeah. I
mean, that's why, as much as I'm like, I wish you wouldn't use the Batman mythos. And by the way, the one thing I will say is, didn't need to see Crime Alley happen again. Enough with fucking Crime Alley, please.
But again, the way they weaved this in and did it to set you up for, is there a future Joker? Is it a different person? I liked that. I like that they went there and tied that little stitch.
Yeah, that's fair. And I did
they made
the chilling final scene when he's thinking about that. And he's laughing, and she's like, "What are you laughing at?" And he goes, "You wouldn't, or what's so funny?" And she's like, "You wouldn't understand. Or you wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it." And it's just like, yeah, all right, that was a final great line. I bought that. Mm-hmm. I bought that. But the talk show execution.
But then, the again, we're giving everything away.
Fine.
But
it's all right.
Those red footprints as he's walking away. Yeah. And then he goes down, and then he starts running the other way, and then someone's chasing him. And did he kill that person, the one who wouldn't get it, or not, or was that, that's the way I took it, is that he killed her in that room.
Interesting.
And that's why they were chasing him, because those were red footprints as he was walking away. So there was a lot to be, dealt with, like. Was it real?
Well, yeah, how much was real, how much wasn't real? I get it, buddy.
Did he or didn't he? Did he kill her? Did he, being the Joker that we know from comics, he would have eviscerated her in that room. Being this Joker, did he kill her or not? You know what I mean? It's like all those little things that are, And that's why I loved and hated this movie.
I hear you, buddy. No, I get it. And there's a lot to unpack. And think about, and that's, hey man, that's the hallmark of a good movie. If you if you didn't like it, if you're still, and that's what I'm saying. I'm like, Jesus, I'm still talking about it. I'm still thinking about it. I talk about it with every person I know who ends up seeing it. I was working radio last night, 3 a.m, talking to our news editor, and he had just seen it, and he said the same thing. I have mixed feelings about it, and I'm like, no, I get it, and it's not for everybody, and of course. The first thing I say, because my one buddy who writes for the Wall Street Journal, his son is a big comic book fan, and his kid's 14. And he's like, Finn's not sure he wants to see it. I'm like, then I wouldn't see it.
Yeah, don't see it.
I'm like, he might, and he is mature for his age. But I told his dad, I'm like, this is a pretty graphic movie, and this is pretty hardcore stuff. Now he and his dad and I were watching Faces of Death back when we were kids. Getting the videos of all those horrific. Death scenes and things like that.
Did I read something just recently about how they were all faked?
The Faces of Death stuff? I have no idea.
I think so.
Wow. Yeah. I have no idea. And it's funny, I was telling you, it's the other episode that's dropping today. This author of a book of entertainment deaths that happened on stage, I figured that was kind of a good Halloween-based thing. Carl Wallenda, the tightrope walker of the Flying Wallendas, he died on camera, and he was doing a tightrope walk, I want to say in Puerto Rico, between 2 buildings, and he was in his late 70s, and halfway through, he slips, and he grabs onto the tightrope, and he can't hold on forever, and he drops, and you hear him scream, and you saw him die. And they showed it on CBS, on the TV, on network news. And I'm like, I can't believe they're showing this on television, but they did. And it's like, wow. So yeah, I mean, it's I mean, you got to be in the right, I mean, I haven't gone postal. I've sounded like I'm going to. Don't worry, Star Trek writers, if you're listening, you're safe. Don't worry. I'm angry, but I'm not that angry. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, my wife had an interesting comment afterwards when we were talking about it. Yeah, she said so. The actor Joaquin Phoenix.
Pardon me.
Was that body real, or was it CGI in terms of
how emaciated he was?
Well, he was, and I believe he may have lost the weight for it. I don't know, but there were some scenes where he was stretching and doing his back, but there were little bones popping out of his collarbone and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, I don't know if I don't know.
I don't know either,
and I never looked it up to find out, but I'm like, I don't know if that's a real thing or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, I bought the realism that they were... those parts I bought the realism. What took me out of the realism was De Niro picking on him and the final scene on the talk show, where I'm just like, no, I'm sorry, I don't believe that you would have been allowed to go on at this length. Now, they could have done another scene where he gets a hold of a camera and not in that talk show forum where he's just by himself and making all of his demands or complaints about the 1% versus the 99%. And I think that would have just as much been a cause celeb for these other idiots that are out there rioting and everything. But yeah, not on the talk show. No, I'm sorry. Didn't buy it. And I don't know. But it's funny. I went from, I don't know if I like this movie, to now I'm like, I would be interested if they had the guts and were able to come up with another, like, does Todd Phillips have another story about this? Oh, and the other thing, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I know, you like old movies. You've seen King of Comedy, right?
Years and years and years ago, yeah.
And Taxi Driver, have you seen that?
Again,
yeah.
Many years ago,
me too.
Yes.
Me too. I mean, I've seen King of Comedy more recently. Taxi Driver in the same way of Joker. After I saw it the one time, I'm like, I don't need to see this again. It's very depressing and stuff, but an amazing movie. It's very interesting, and it's funny because I was also coming off seeing Ad Astra, the Brad Pitt astronaut movie, and it's very interesting how many filmmakers, and really it's just the two guys, but how filmmakers are comfortable readdressing themes that were already in classic movies, but generationally, who under 40, I'm sure you can have a room full of people that probably haven't seen Taxi Driver and haven't seen King of Comedy, and I think those people will be intrigued and blown away by Joker in a very fresh way, whereas I'm like, Scorsese's done this before and he did it better.
Right. Well, we were talking about that, before when that person was describing their ailment and to an old movie, and he realized that the doctors and nurses didn't know what he was talking about, type thing. So there's that whole, do you know what's come in the past? So like, is Joker that good if you know about Taxi Driver and all this other stuff? But also, you've heard recently all this stuff about Scorsese not liking superhero movies, and stuff like that.
Go on.
Right. Is he talking about the Marvel Universe stuff, or is he talking about this movie? Because,
well, ironically, he's a producer on this movie.
Oh, is he? I didn't realize that.
And I think his complaint really was, I don't know. I keep going back and forth because Gabe Hardman and I were talking about it on Twitter, and he said, I don't think he's talking about superhero movies in general. I think he specifically is talking about the Marvel formula movies. And I'm like, well, yeah, I could see that. And he goes, we're going to have to get Scorsese in a corner someday and ask him. But it does disappoint me, his feelings, because I'm like, well, Joker is a different kind of movie, and also, much like Logan and Deadpool, a game changer in a good way, where it's like, no. I keep making the comparison to the Western. I'm like, and this is the third time I think in recent memory that I've had this conversation. I want to hear what you think of it. The Western in the silent era, it was the white hat against the black hat, and it was pretty blatant who the heroes were and who the villains were. And then you got to the 50s, and great filmmakers like Bud Boetticher or Stanley Kramer with High Noon, and you got more nuanced villains, and you understood their motivations, and you had more anti-heroes and things. And that's where, Logan comes in and some ideas like that, certainly even Deadpool. Deadpool is a black comedy, went even further. And that's why I'm like, for people that are worried, like, aren't we getting too many of these things? It's like, no, we're still, I mean, I know it's been 20 years since X-Men and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man and the like, 20 years plus, almost 25 years now. But we're still at the beginning. And I really think that filmmakers, that there's a lot you can do within a superhero film that hasn't been explored yet. And I was talking about that with Rob, and I said, and he's like, oh yeah, Ant-Man. I go, Ant-Man's a comedy. He goes, Ant-Man's a comedy, but it's a caper movie as well. I'm like, good point. And it's like, that's the thing. You get shades of other movie genres within the superhero trappings, and that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think it disappoints me because Scorsese came from the Roger Corman cheap movie background, and also was groundbreaking, obviously, in his filmmaking compared to the studio system. And he's not alone. Coppola has said the same things. Spielberg has said the same things. They all say they're their amusement park rides more than they are movies. And it's like...
Well, Spielberg is one who shouldn't say that at all, because look at all he's done.
Well, it's not all he's done. He's done quiet movies, too. I mean, there's
no, absolutely. He's done
Color Purple
and Schindler's List and all that other...
Yeah, Duel.
Absolutely, but, man, the guy made his living on, give me a bucket of popcorn and let me sit and watch this spectacle that's about to happen.
100%.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's... Lucas hasn't said much about the Marvel movies, which is interesting because again he comes from that same generation. I don't know. I'm like I said, I respect the hell out of Scorsese because he's a genius filmmaker. I'm so excited for The Irishman. I can't wait. But I was really disappointed, and it's like, wow, man, you are really not giving these films the credit that they're due. And of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just wrote an amazing essay at the end of last week in the Hollywood Reporter. Did you read that?
Right? No, I said, but that must be sticking in your crock.
Oh no, it was awesome. No, because he.
No, I know that, but that he wrote it and that he's capable of that because.
That's true. That. Well, yeah, no. You gotta understand. I just didn't know he was writing Sherlock Holmes.
No, I know.
All right, because he said no. I mean, honestly, and forgive me, but I know you're teasing me. I mean, the guy's a genius. I love Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and I always have, and he's such a deep thinker. And that's why, man, all these Hollywood Reporter essays, because he also wrote a Joker essay. I haven't read it yet. But yeah, maybe I'll read it as the introduction to this conversation. But yeah, he's a deep thinker, and really, he's like, I get where Marty's coming from, but his whole thing in reaction to Scorsese was, there's high art and there's low art. And, he's like, you can see a Renoir or, a Rembrandt, and you can see the dogs playing poker painting. And he goes, yeah.
There's a lot more people buying the dogs playing poker painting than there are Rembrandts.
But also that, like, they both can hit you on an emotional level. Right. And, yes, of course, this is high art and this is low art. Low art makes, low art you get a kind of gut reaction to. High art makes you think. And at least that was Jabbar's argument.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that his bashing of the superhero movies doesn't hold any water for me now that you told me he's a producer on Joker.
Yeah. Well, it's like Mark Maron. It's like, well, you're kind of talking out of both sides of your mouth. I agree. I almost wonder if he had.
And I'm wondering if he's doing it as hype for the movie.
No. Well, I think it's more that Todd Phillips almost had to cut him in because of the blatant references to King of Comedy and Taxi Driver. I mean, the other thing I said with Rob Burnett last week when I talked to him about Joker, I'm like, this is like a cover band doing an amazing cover of like a Beatles. It's so funny, yesterday the movie came out earlier this year, and it's like, this is like a great cover band, and if you've never heard the original band do it, you're like, wow, that's amazing. And it's like, yeah, but you should really hear the original because this isn't the first time this has been done. And like I said, Ad Astra is the same way because that film, as people know, and I've discussed it both with Rob and Larry Young as well on previous Word Balloons, it's a reverse mirror image of 2001. It addresses a lot of the same things, but it also does it with the perspective of, we know a lot more about what's out there than we did in 1968 when Kubrick made 2001. So the mysteries of space that were still out there, now it's like, no, we know. We know what's out there. And I mean, have you seen Ad Astra yet? Are you going to see it?
No. Maybe eventually.
He takes a commercial flight to the moon, and when he lands there, it looks like any airport in any city in the United States. It's the moon, but it's so mundane, and as opposed to the futuristic bells and whistles that you see in 2001, and that's not spoiling anything. Other than, it's just like, it's funny because you think, oh my God, what does it look like to take a commercial flight to the moon? And it's like, he's on an escalator and he's walking through the airport, and you see a sign for DHL delivery, and you see a sign for Subway. Subway's on the moon. Subway sandwiches. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like, yeah, man, no, that makes sense because by now, sure, the businesses are going to beat the governments in terms of setting up territories on the moon. And in fact, if the governments even can because all the treaties say no, the moon's free space. It doesn't belong to any country, so all the businesses are going to be up there. It's very interesting. Anyway, and there's a bunch of scenes like that are in contrast to if you've never seen all of 2001, I would see that first and then see Ad Astra. Because, like I said, I think it addresses a lot of the same themes, but it's like, no, now we know. We 50 years from today, where I think Ad Astra is, we know a lot of this stuff already. And it's interesting. So it's, like I said, I just find it interesting that the filmmakers are stealing, to be crass, or homages or whatever, at a rate of these old films. Where, again, 20-somethings, they're not going to see these movies, the originals. They're going to see the new movie. Go, oh, wow, these are fresh ideas. And, again, nothing new. I mean, God, Hollywood's been doing it for years. They took, Ben-Hur was a silent classic before Charlton Heston did it in the 50s, and then we got the crappy one a couple of years ago.
Right, yeah.
So, I don't know, that's my observation about that. That's all I have to say about that.
No, I agree with all of that. They don't know things that came before, and it's like you said, it's a spectacle. Oh my gosh,
it's new to them.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, it's groundbreaking for them. Absolutely, yeah, man. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
Having said that, it was dark, man.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
I'm watching this thing, going, man, I want to beat the shit out of these people for them, type.
Oh, that's
thing.
Interesting. I never sympathized with him. I have to be honest.
I went back and forth, because there were things that were happening that I was like, and then there's things like, you're a dumbass, you deserve it.
Well, or just, man, like get a whole. But again, they showed that he was obviously, was he mentally damaged, or did his mother screw him up and have him on meds when he really didn't need to be on meds? We don't know.
But that's what I was saying. What was real, what wasn't. I didn't need to be on meds, and she put him on meds. So did he need to be on meds? It's that whole. To me, it was just, you watch it through, but then afterwards you're thinking, well, it wasn't real, or was it?
Sure,
it wasn't real. Like when it was finally revealed that she wasn't real, I'm like, okay, I knew that.
His girlfriend.
But then, did he kill her? Did he kill the kid too in the apartment? Again, you don't know. You don't know, and and it's another question of, did he do it or not? Was it real or not? It was just to me, the onslaught came afterwards. About you analyzed each scene, like. Did the guy give him the gun? Set him up. His clown friend set him up. He dropped it in the hospital. They saw it. He got fired. But then there was that comment that came later on about how he had done that before, or he had a gun before at another performance or something else where there was a gun involved, and those things were small. And they were almost kind of glossed over where you don't pay attention to them, but they were there. Was that real? Was that not? Did he do that thing with the gun on purpose, or did the guy set him up, or did he do it himself? Type thing.
Fair point, man. I don't know. I again, that I bought. And I did feel bad for him that the clowns were being dicks to him and everything. And I did think it was really interesting when the gun did pop out and he's there with the kids. And again, that's what half of that I did. But
again, after you watch it through, like I did, but then you think about it and you're like, wait a minute, I remember there being a line about one of the guys saying that he had another gun at another performance or something like that, and then that makes you think, well, Was that real or not?
See, I took it more like, was he a dick? He's like, well, it's like, hey, man, you're screwed up. You're a dick. You're a jerk. I mean, again, and you can say it's meds and whatever. I don't know, man. I don't know. There are times when they try to get evoke sympathy from you with a character, and sometimes I'm just like, get off your ass and fucking fix your life, all right? And I know some people can't, and I don't mean to be crass, but my line is always pull yourself out of the nosedive. I understand. I mean, again, it's easy. It's easier said, and hey man, I deal with depression, and I'm not trying to make light of people who do have serious depressive problems. I'm talking specifically about the way I interpreted what Arthur was going through in the movie. And again, even knowing his name, I don't know, man. Like I said, it's these problems I have with the Joker we were given in this movie. Yet, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still talking about it. So it must have affected me more than I realize. And there's a lot there that as I dismiss the things I don't like, I'm intrigued by the things that I did like. So it worked. And that's why I tell people, I give it 2.5 stars, but I really suggest you go see it because I think it's worth seeing. I think if you're a nerd, it's worth seeing. It opens a door for more sophisticated storytelling, and it is in the face of Scorsese's dismissal, if it is in general of the comic book genre, of going, no, there's a lot more that can still be said about this stuff. So it is interesting. So, yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts? I mean, we've been going 2 hours now between our Star Trek and Joker rants.
Oh, people are going to hate us.
No. This is a good conversation. Honestly, I know you're teasing again, but I sometimes have to and I know that you already know this, but people like these, when we really sit down and think. God, James Tucker came on last week to talk about DC animation, and I'm so glad because I love talking to him when I get to see him at shows. And a lot of times in press junkets, they really want us to focus on promoting the product. And, I know in New York this year, it was all about the Batman Beyond show is having its 20th anniversary, and the Blu-ray came out this week. And then also next week, Wonder Woman, Bloodlines, the new Rosario Dawson Wonder Woman movie is out. So, all right, that's the product to promote. But I'm like, James, you've been involved with DC animation since Batman the Animated Series. Look at the evolution of storytelling and the things you're able to do now that they were fighting you on stupid stuff back in the 90s with the animated series. And, it's just, these are the kind of conversations that I want to have beyond, hey, you got a new book out and stuff. So I like that we're talking about this stuff. And we can do it in a way that, we can disagree with what we got. But I hope not. I hope I'm not coming off as an asshole, like you said, and you're teasing. I hated those short treks. But no, Joker's really an interesting movie, and that's why it's worthy of everyone's attention. So,
right. Yeah, I think it covers a few different topics. Not to say the least of which is mental illness, and there was that. And I kind of hate when movies delve into this territory sometimes when there was so much police presence at theaters because of what people were going to think about this and how they were going to react to it. I don't know sometimes. I don't know if it's just me being cynical, which I tend to be. How much hype is that from the studio or actual, police that have
genuine concern.
Genuine concerns.
I'm glad you brought that up because I would have forgotten to talk about that. I saw it the Sunday of New York Comic Con, and I saw it Sunday evening in Chicago. And when me and my buddy Jeff got home, we both noticed that on the news wires there were two guys in downtown Chicago that went to a theater. They were smoking in the theater. They were blowing their smoke in people's faces. They were laughing crazy during the movie. And they got arrested. And I'm glad they got arrested. They didn't have guns. They were just being jerks. And it's like, hey, guess what? Fuck you. You heard all this pre-hype. People were upset and nervous. And you guys think it would be funny to dick around. I hope they spent the night in jail. I hope they were scared to death after they were arrested. I have no idea how old they were. But it's like, look, after what happened at Dark Knight Rises, don't be an asshole. don't be an asshole. So I can appreciate the concern on the police's standpoint. I can appreciate the cynicism of, God, was that hype? Did the studio? I mean, God, that would really be incredibly irresponsible if it did come from the studios. I don't think it did. I think it was genuine concern, and it's sad.
Well, I don't think they would go that far. Hopefully they wouldn't. But I'm saying, like, how much of that buzz do they put out there? Do they, like, they kind of instigate? Yeah. They instigate. I did. Like I said, it opened on the weekend that we were at New York Comic Con, and people all weekend asked if I had seen it, and I'm like, no, I basically live in this convention center this weekend, so it's not, it's not a thing that's happening. But one guy said to me, he goes, "Yeah, I'm going to go see it, but I'm going to wait a week or so."
Sure.
And I'm like, "Oh, are you busy?" And he goes, "No. The things I've heard, I don't want to see it in theaters the first couple of weeks because of being afraid of what might happen, the threat of things, and and that kind of triggers in my mind, is that something that's, that helps generate and give fuel to this movie, or is it coming from the studio? Is it coming from people themselves? Yeah.
No, I get it, man. And then, I'll tell you, my buddy and I were like, let's sit in the very back row, just in case something does happen. We can drop to the floor. Yeah. And we were half serious. I mean, because, it's a fucked up world, man. And you're right. And I do think that the level of that it was a news story and the anticipation of bad things happening, that, no, I get it. And you're right. That would inspire some stupid jerk from going completely extreme, an unbalanced person doing that, to the assholes that we dealt with in Chicago. And that's the only. It was funny. That's the only local thing. I wondered if you had heard of any New York stories that were similar or anything like that. Of crowd getting out of doing something stupid like that.
I hadn't. Just also not having seen it till just the other day, and we're a week, 2 weeks. Did I have a weekend? Yeah, 2 weeks removed from New York Comic Con.
Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks since it opened. Yeah. Third weekend or whatever. No, it's
right.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm glad that it, it's like the Y2K buzz of, all right, guess what? Mostly nothing happened. That's great, but I also am glad that a couple of these jerks were like, yeah, guess what? You're under arrest, and we have every right to arrest you because you're causing a disturbance in the theater. And like I said, I really hope they spent the night in jail, and we're really scared because they're idiots, and it's like, don't fuck with people. Things are fucked up enough on their own. It's like, and also, I want provocative movies. And this is a provocative movie, positively and negatively. And it's like, art should be provocative, and I don't want restrictions. People should be afraid of a movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's so funny. I mean, this is certainly between it and literally between Joker and the It sequel. It's scary clown season.
I haven't seen the It.
Neither have I, man. I liked the Tim Curry TV miniseries.
Or as Art likes to call him, the It guy.
Did you see a New York Comic Con where there are It clowns walking around?
I think I saw a cosplayer online that was a New York Comic Con. I didn't see any. Man, that place.
Oh, sure.
It was packed, and it was a lot more packed than I've seen it before, and more than San Diego. It was nuts.
Sure. There's part of me that I really, as I always say, at the conventions I miss, I feel like I'm a kid with a broken leg looking from my window and watching all my friends playing on the street and be like, oh man, I want to be out there. And all the photos and all the tweets and then Facebook stuff. When the first It movie came out, I was at FanX in Salt Lake City. Say it.
Salt Lake City.
And there was an It clown in the audience of one of my panels. and it was freaking me out because I'm just like, I mean, it was like the guy had it to a T, and it's just like, yeah, I'm not a, you know, so, and like I said, I really love the TV miniseries they did with Tim Curry and Richard Thomas, and Harry Anderson was in it. It was such an interesting, like, cast of people in the TV miniseries version of it. And I'm like, all right, I've seen that story. I don't need to see it again. And I'm sure it's a hell of a lot scarier in the two new movies. But I'm like, yeah, fuck you. I don't want to see. I'm a wuss when it comes to horror movies. I really am. I like classic Universal horror movies. I love the 50s Hammer movies from England. That's about it. I don't ever need to see The Exorcist again. I've seen a lot of them. Suspiria, It's Alive.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw, the original and stuff. Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead. And I'm really not built for horror. And that's why I'm, not interested.
Yeah. I like fun movies. Yeah. Like I'm trying to get to go see The Addams Family. Because I want to see
I understand. I'll wait for TV on that one. But I appreciate, it looks fun. And I loved, good Lord, I loved the ones with Raul Julia and Angelica Houston. They were funny.
Or as my wife and I joke, his name is Rule Julia. I saw him on Broadway. You'll love this in Man of La Mancha.
Oh, great!
With Sheena Easton.
Wow, that's Dulcinea. Yeah. Wow. No, that's kind of perfect casting.
He was fantastic. She was okay. She was okay.
No, that's a great part. That's a great musical. I'm a big Man of La Mancha fan. That's great. He was wonderful, and it's so sad that he died young. Because I love in the Addams Family movies. I think it was in the second one where he's home and he's broke and he's watching Sally Jesse Raphael. And she's like, Gomez, are you calling again? No, Sally, I have a good point to make. And it's like, and I even he made a really bad PBS live action video sci-fi thing called Overdrawn at the Memory Bank that they make fun of on Mystery Science Theater 3000, the original show. And I remember seeing it, when it was shown on PBS, and it was great. And it's got a lot of similarities to the movie Brazil, the Terry Gilliam movie. Mm-hmm. And it's that kind of weird little corporate run society and everything. But he gets lost in movies. And he's a big Casablanca fan. And his mind gets put into this database. And to keep him occupied, he imagines himself in Casablanca, and he plays a version of Bogart, talking to himself and everything. And it's great. He's great in it. And it's an interesting sci-fi idea. It's not necessarily well acted by the rest of the cast, but he was terrific in it. I love Raul Julia. I have an Ecuadorian friend that I grew up with who was Raul. So I learned at a very young age how to say Raul properly. So.
Oh yeah. No, I know.
Well, of course.
My wife.
No, I understand. It's
my wife. Yeah.
Rule. I like Rule.
Rule Julia.
I get it. Well, it's like Boba Fett and Chewbacca. I'm with you.
Right.
So, Francis, great conversation, man.
Well, thanks for having me on Word Balloon,
It's my
Johnny.
pleasure, and I don't want to.
I feel like I'm staying in the penthouse right now.
And you're and of course this is an Oh Yeah podcast as well. But we'll go further into Joker with Scoot and Artie because I'm sure they'll bring in fresh ideas with their perspective. I am dying to hear what Artie thinks. I mean, Scoot.
Oh, me too.
But especially Artie because of his sensibilities and It's I hope the movie doesn't bum him out where he's going to be sad for hours. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well,
any comics we should know about, Francis, that are coming up that you want to promote, or other books?
Superman of Smallville just came out.
Congratulations, great book, and I'm glad it's doing. I was in Portland with Bendis. And he was talking about, he's saying, wow, Superman from Smallville, it's really doing well. I'm like, Artie and Franco, man.
Oh.
Absolutely. No, he was very impressed with how well the book's doing. And he goes, yeah, it was great. I read it. It was great. I'm like, cool.
Oh, that's fantastic. High praise. Thank you. I'm heading to Baltimore Comic Con this weekend. and we've been nominated for the Goes the Owl for a Ringo Award for Best
Fantastic, man. Congratulations to you and Sarah Richards. That's wonderful.
Thank you. So we're excited. We won't win, but we're excited to go to the award ceremony and dress up and just have a good time. And then I can't remember what's announced, what hasn't. Archimaniacs we're working on with
cool.
Art coming from DC, hopefully in April, and a couple of other books that hopefully will be coming from DC as well, and a slew of creator-owned stuff that I've been working on that hopefully will see the light of day. It will see the light of day, just when.
I understand. So, No, man, honestly, I've said this to Artie as well. God, man, I think back to, when I knew you guys with Patrick the Wolf Boy and that initial announcement of Tiny Titans, and it's been great knowing you guys, and you guys are wonderful friends, and I really am thrilled with where your careers have gone, and the audience is receptive to what you guys do. I mean, I know you guys do quality work, and I'm glad that the people out there understand and respect it, and it's a great time now for kids comics. And you guys deserve the attention because you know what you're doing in that milieu.
Oh, thank you, sir. Well, hopefully there's some surprises coming for you. So,
I like it.
I got some interesting things happening, and there's a couple of books that I threw at DC, and I think they've stuck to the wall. So it'll be fun.
Great, man. When you're ready to talk about them, come back, and certainly we'll be talking about them on the podcast. Which has been irregularly scheduled because of everybody's work schedules, but we'll get back to it. And in the meantime, come back to Word Balloon as well, and I'm happy to promote them on both podcasts. You know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, we'll be able to get on them more now that summer is over and school started. And convention, I'm doing my last convention for the year this weekend, so I'll be home a lot more, and we'll be able to do some more.
Sounds good, man. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Jenny.
That's Franco. Good luck, Franco, this weekend with the Ringo Awards at Baltimore Comic-Con. Again, if you're going out there, make sure you tell him hello. Tell him you're a fan of when he comes on Word Balloon and the Oh Yeah podcast. We're due to have a new one. Artie and Scoot have been kind of busy, and so this is also a Franco Clanko on the Oh Yeah podcast feed. But I wanted to get it to the Word Balloon audience as well because I knew it'd be a good conversation talking about Star Trek and Joker as we did. So thanks, Franco, for coming on, as always, and thank you for listening today on Word Balloon. There's another episode out as well. My buddy Alex Segura from Archie Comics is talking about a new Comixology comic book that he has, a new street vigilante, The Black Ghost. Really interesting story and conversation about it. And also he's got a one-shot coming up from Archie. Archie and meets the B-52s with Dan Parent. Sounds like a lot of fun. And we talk about some other nerd news that's been happening this week. I didn't talk really with Franco about Kevin Feige taking over Marvel Comics, but Alex and I have an interesting discussion about that and some of the changes that are happening at the big two at DC and Marvel. I wanted to get Alex's point of view on that. So that's the other podcast that's dropping today. I hope you give it a listen. Thanks a lot for listening today. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon, or click on the Patreon ad at wordballoon.com. Word Balloon also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. They have great books, man, and I'm happy to talk about them with these creatives who make these books happen. I am looking forward to a first conversation with Marguerite Bennett. We've talked about it in principle at various conventions, brought it up to her at Rose City in Portland. She's like, yeah, when you're ready, I'm happy to talk, and I can't wait to talk to her. She's a great creator, and not only talking to her about her Aftershock books, but certainly DC Bombshells and other things that she's been working on. But I can say the same thing about my buddy Tim Seeley with Dark Red, and my buddy Phil Hester with Stronghold, and my buddy Cullen Bunn with Brothers Dracul and Dark Ark and Night Temporal, Matthew Klickstein's You Are Obsolete, Garth Ennis's stuff like Jimmy's Bastards and A Walk Through Hell, Stephanie Phillips with her excellent Aftershock book and Descendant, and also some new other projects. I hope to have Stephanie back in the weeks ahead. I'll be talking to more Aftershock creators about their books. You don't have to wait. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks a lot for listening. Again, Alex Segura also dropping today. Another great conversation of Weird Balloon. I hope you'll enjoy it, and I hope you'll come back for more next week, because I got a lot of great stuff coming. It's going to be a crazy radio week, so I've scheduled a lot of afternoon podcast interviews, some more Weird Balloon topics, and also straight-up conversations with some of your favorite creators coming back to tell us the new things they're working on and what they're thinking about in today's comic book culture. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.